Some memories, even after 15 years, remain crystal clear. Like the moment 25-year-old Demian first set foot on the battlefield, and that very first time he had to take a human life. The moment blood hit the stone floor drop by drop soaking red, even the time he wiped out over 2,000 enemy soldiers only for his own breath to grow shallow until his body finally collapsed. The scene shifted to a morning at the town hall. The red-haired boy stared coldly at the contract facing a middle-aged man and his associate who were busy, rambling on and on. In short, the entire insurance payout from his parents' passing would be managed by this uncle provided he double-checked the documents. "Just sign here, kid." Foker feigned kindness, urging his nephew. "That's right, Demian, the paperwork is just a formality. Why bother reading it all? Just put your pen to the paper and it'll all be over." The man rested his chin on his hands, smug and persuasive. "Don't worry. Just leave everything to your uncle. By the time you're an adult, I'll return every single penny." Demian's fingers tightened slightly on the paper. He suddenly realized this was the very day his life was completely ruined. Demian tore the contract apart decisively. "The insurance money," he stated coldly, "I will only accept it through the Imperial Bank, and it must be in my name only." Foker stared in shock at the fluttering scraps of paper. "What the hell is this?" Demian added indifferently. "And make sure to add a special clause if anyone else comes to withdraw it without my signature or paperwork as proof the bank is absolutely forbidden from releasing the funds." His gaze was steady and firm, allowing no room for refusal. Foker was shaking with rage. He grabbed Demian by the collar and shouted, "What the hell do you think you're doing, you little brat? Just sign the paper. Why are you being such a pain?" He expected Demian to grovel, but instead, Demian just smirked. I was worried he'd keep up the nice guy act and try to brush it off. Before Foker could finish his rant, what the A punch flew out, sending him rolling across the floor. Demian praised him with satisfaction. "Thanks, Uncle, for keeping that same pathetic face just like I remember." As he turned to Dulac, the man recoiled in terror. Dulac frantically began digging through his briefcase. I can add that extra clause right now, sir." The current situation left Demian lost in thought. If it were before, back then he was only 13, so he couldn't do anything, but he smiled gleefully. It's fine now, because he had been reborn, returning to the past, reliving the time before his previous life. In his past life, Demian had crawled through a battlefield littered with corpses. Gasping for air, he cursed under his breath. "Damn it! I told you from the start this was a suicide mission." As the captain of the Bashak Kingdom's penal squad, he had gritted his teeth in bitterness. How the hell are 100 men supposed to take down an army of over 2,000 saints? Suddenly he coughed up blood, his vision blurring. Weakly, Demian reached out to a fallen soldier, closing the man's eyes to let him rest in peace. Regret flooded his mind, even though the mission was ultimately a success. Desperate, Demian knelt before his comrade's body, whispering, "I'm sorry. If only I had been a little stronger, I could have protected everyone." Unable to accept it, he punched the ground hard. "Damn it all!" Demian stumbled, clutching his side. His body couldn't hold on much longer. He swayed in the air. "I guess this is it for me," he thought. His dirty helmet was tossed into a corner. Demian lay there helplessly, leaving his life to fate. He covered his eyes, which were brimming with tears. Was it the emotion, or just the fact that he was dying? His mind raced with all sorts of things. If I had joined the army earlier instead of waiting until I was 25, maybe things would have been different. Hot tears rolled down his cheeks. Demian bit his lip, trembling. Just once. If heaven gave me one more chance, I swear I'd rule the battlefield with my brothers. But it was too late now. In his final moments, Demian took his last breath. He thought he had died right there. But luckily, a miracle happened. Unexpectedly, Demian had returned to the past 17 years in the past. He looked at his hands, smooth and untouched by the horrors of life and death. Next, he pulled up his shirt to check his stomach. The magic core in his lower abdomen was the most important thing for a magic-practicing warrior, and it was completely different from his previous life. Demian's current magic core was perfectly intact in this timeline. He could absolutely learn how to master his magic now. Yet Demian still felt uneasy. In his previous life, after his uncle swindled all his insurance money and kicked him out of the house, he had to live in hiding and do all sorts of menial dirty work in the underworld. An orphan abandoned by his guardian, he even had to take the fall for the crimes of an officer in a street gang. He thought his life was over when he was forced to join the army and sent to the front lines. Who would have thought someone like him would have made it that far? Demian mindlessly flopped onto the soft bed. Who would have guessed I'd actually climb the ranks to become a captain? Well, he concluded boredly, at least I'm dead now. While Demian was lost in a tangle of thoughts, the sound of quiet footsteps suddenly came from outside. Still, even after all this time in the military, he carefully sat up in bed. Uninvited guests, huh? Demian vigilantly grabbed the knife from under his pillow. The person outside slowly turned the doorknob. The moment the door cracked open, Demian lunged out like a wild beast, blade in hand. The group of assassins jumped in shock. What the? Demian, on high alert, grabbed the knife from under the pillow. Slowly, they pushed the doorknob. The moment the door creaked open, Demian lunged out like a wild beast, blade in hand. The assassins all jumped in shock. What the hell? With a surge of strength, he plunged his weapon into the thigh of the nearest attacker. The man let out a howl of agony, but as he yanked the blade back out, damn it, he'd only managed to go halfway in. The other assassin reacted instantly. Screaming like a maniac, he lunged forward. You bastard, I'll kill you. Demian nimbly dodged the first swipe, but the deranged assassin was already going for a second strike. He ducked, slipping out of range just in time. Then he rewarded his opponent with a blade straight into the leg muscle. A flash of bloodthirsty, razor-sharp intensity sparked in Demian's eyes. Who sent you? The two strangers lay sprawled on the ground, wailing in misery with fresh wounds in their thighs. Demian grabbed the remaining one by the collar and held his knife up to interrogate him. Was it Fokker who sent you? Seeing the guy wasn't planning on answering, he gave him a quick jab to drive the point home. I asked you, did Fokker send you? In the middle of the interrogation, Demian suddenly heard someone whispering behind his back. This kid is truly terrifying. He turned to see someone approaching, acting as if they owned the place. Did I forget to introduce myself? Demian thought to himself. If Muskman is here, that means... He had been busy dealing with the stranger, but seeing a much tastier target, he decided to let the other one go for now. Demian smirked and started telling a story 17 years ago back then. Tucked away in a narrow alley, Demian was cornered by a group of strangers. He struggled and screamed relentlessly, "Let me go, it hurts." Even after hiding deep in this slum, the fact that they caught him right away was truly bizarre. They kicked him hard, cuffed him, and dragged him away. Demian still held on to the memory of Fokker's greedy face. He realized that the reason he had been captured, the whole thing, was all part of Fokker's plan. The more he spoke, the harder Demian pressed the blade into the man's body. He slowly stood up, pointed his knife directly at Muskman and spat, "That bastard dared to betray me, huh?" Muskman's eyes mirrored a deep, indescribable hatred. Without another word, he charged at Demian. Demian reacted quickly and dodged the strike. His speed seemed to shock Muskman, but it was Demian's calm demeanor that really gave the man the creeps. Demian thought with a sigh. Is Muskman really this weak? No matter how fast Muskman was, he couldn't even touch a hair on Demian's head. Feeling smug, Demian taunted him. I have a very special ability. Getting tired of missing every single time. Muskman roared, "You little brat!" Demian was busy thinking. After enduring thousands of beatings and dying and coming back to life 100 times, at some point, I started to see through every movement of my opponent. Impatience was written all over the man's face. The very moment his enemy prepared to strike, Demian analyzed every gesture, the way he planted his feet, the angle of his waist rotation. He waited for the movement in the shoulder, and by the time the attack came, he had already predicted it 10 seconds ago. That was why he dodged it more smoothly than anything. Everything was laid bare. The guy was aiming for his head. Muskman was losing his mind, unable to do a thing. The more the man lost his cool, the easier he was to read. You're acting so desperate, you little rat. Luck was on his side. Demian grabbed Muskman's wrist and the sword went flying. Disarmed and outplayed, Muskman looked ready to blow up the entire castle just to end it. This is hopeless, you bastard. A heavy blow to the ribs left Muskman with no energy to fight back. He couldn't believe it. No way. Looking at him like an eyesore, Demian pulled out his knife, ready to end the man's suffering. Muskman could only look up, muttering in disbelief. He's clearly only 13 years old. Using the coolest look he could muster, he asked, "Want to know how I dodged that?" Demian proudly held up his knife. "It's no big deal. I just see everything. I know exactly where you're going to hit. The moment you lift your hand, I've already figured it all out." Muskman's face turned pale as a ghost, so frustrated he looked like he might vomit blood. "What the hell? That's impossible." Before he could say more, Demian pointed the blade at his face. Believe it or not, that's the truth. With his last bit of strength, he tried one more threat. Muskman attempted some psychological warfare. "Do you think I'm the only one if word of this gets to the others?" Unfortunately, he met Demian, who was harder than stone. You're about to die here. How on earth is word going to get back to them? Instead, he used the moment to fish for information. You seem smart enough to know what to do, right? Was it Fokker who sent you? Muskman, like the others, wouldn't say a word. Demian said, half joking, half serious. You'd better answer me properly if you don't want to be a cripple for the rest of your life. He still couldn't believe his eyes. Could these eyes really belong to a 13-year-old? Demian's blood-red eyes terrified him. Finally, Muskman cracked and admitted it. Fine, yes, Fokker hired me. The moment he mentioned the name, Demian barked at him to shut up. That's enough. Muskman didn't even understand what was happening. What? Then a clean, effortless slash. The man's throat was cut like a chicken being butchered. Demian turned away coldly. Right. Even if I'm leaving, I have to clean up the mess. He thought to himself. If there's one thing I've learned in my 30 years of life, it's to minimize making enemies. However, if you happen to have enemies, when you put their bodies away in a room, you have to crush them so they can never rise again. Deep in a small house in the woods, Monta checked his watch and guessed, at this hour it should be over by now. Fokker seemed to be fuming at Demian. That bastard, come over here. Monta was still bragging. Once it's done, I'll drag him here myself. Montao was still boasting. Once I'm done with this, I'll drag his ass right here. Don't worry, sir, he's just talking big, that's all. You had to call me in just to catch a little brat. You must be furious, huh? Fokker slammed his hand on the table, his face bruised and swollen. It's because of that bastard that His head throbbed from the agitation. Wait! He stopped talking and turned to Montao. We'll get this sorted out right away. Just hang on a little longer, sir. Don't even think about using my late arrival as an excuse to cut my pay. No sooner had he finished speaking than the door pushed open. Montao, you've arrived, I see. Fokker was burning with impatience. He wanted to tear the kid to pieces, but he was stuck because of the insurance contract. He thought bitterly, once I get that contract settled, I'll deal with that little brat. Just as he pushed the door open, a knife flew and Montao's face fell. What is this? The knife slammed directly into the ground. Fokker was absolutely terrified by the sight. Montao seemed to realize something was wrong. A failure, then. Demian walked in full of confidence. The man asked, Are you Demian? The boy replied in a friendly tone. That's right. The henchman, hearing himself called a henchman, felt a bit puzzled. Demian glared at him and said, Isn't that because you're just a stooge for that fat pig standing behind you? Is that why you're so obedient to his commands? Montao called out loudly, Hey, Fokker! He's openly trying to rob me. I'm tripling my fee. Fokker shrieked, Tripling it? I've already taken heavy losses negotiating with you, Montao! Well, that's obvious, isn't it? He drew his sword to finish Demian off. With years of experience, Montao's keen observation skills kicked in. See the bloodstains on the tip of that staff? He raised his sword and faced Demian without a hint of fear. Looks like there's a variable here we didn't account for. Fokker's face went completely bloodless. The price tag made his heart skip a beat. But noticing his hesitation, Montao pretended to lose patience. He made a motion to sheath his sword. Fine, then, I'm backing out. Witnessing that, the man panicked completely. Wait! Fokker stood frozen in place, his eyes filled with hesitation and fear, staring fixedly at Demian across the room. At this moment, a dense, suffocating pressure, an aura of killing intent, was radiating from the boy's body so heavy it felt like it was crushing the very space around them. Ha! After a fierce mental struggle, the man finally gritted his teeth and made up his mind. I'll pay triple chaji. Even though his heart ached at losing such a large sum, he had no other choice. If Montao left, he was a dead man. Seeing his tactic to squeeze for more money had been a total success. Montao wore a smug smile. Deal. He put on an innocent face and shrugged casually as if he were completely detached from the fight. My guys might have been beaten up, but I don't have a personal grudge. It's just business. Demian didn't even bother to respect him, looking at him with cold, dead eyes. Well, I do have a grudge. Because of you bastards. The savage shouting of those people still echoed in his ears. You little brat! If I catch you, you're dead for sure. The pain that pierced through his bones and tore apart both body and soul that year, Demian swore he would never forget it, even in death. The first half of his life was spent living like garbage in the slums, and on top of that, his magic core had been shattered. It was from that dark moment that he vowed to himself to take revenge at any cost. As if I'd let you off that easily. His hand tightened around the spear. so don't ask me why. Just die. To be looked down upon by a junior with such an arrogant attitude inflicted serious damage to Montao's pride. You little punk! The sharp spearhead suddenly shifted, pointing straight at a vulnerable spot between his opponent's legs. This vicious move terrified him so much he didn't dare take another step forward. You son of a bitch! Aiming for my crotch, are you? Not bad at all. Demian immediately entered a combat stance, gripping the shaft of his spear firmly with both hands, creating a straight line. The sound of weapons clashing pierced the ears and echoed throughout the four walls of the room. Facing the flurry of sword strikes, Demian was forced to retreat continuously to neutralize the pincer attack. Noticing his opponent was just defending, Montao immediately played his trick. The moment he saw him distracted by the defense, the vision of a perfect victory was already mapped out and hallucinated in his mind. I'm going to slash his thighs to ribbons. Montao's other hand shifted to grip the blade itself, preparing to deliver a fatal finishing blow just as he had calculated. Demian tilted his head slightly to dodge the direct punch. Putting all his strength into it, he lunged the sword, aiming straight for the boy's thigh. This is the real move. But the development that followed went completely off track, causing Montao's heart to skip a beat. Whoosh! With just a light, elegant shift in footwork, he easily slipped past, evading the opponent's sword. The trick of using the knife in the right hand as a decoy. Demian utilized the butt of his spear, striking forcefully at various acupoints, vital points all over his body. He glanced coldly at the man who was frozen in shock, mocking him. I knew it from the start. Montao's jaw clenched so hard it creaked. Damn it, you little brat! The veins on his forehead and temples bulged and saliva sprayed out as he screamed like a beast. I'll kill you! However, before the threat could even be finished, a wave of intense pain struck, successfully cutting him off. The very acupoints Demian's spear had struck suddenly tore open. All the strength in Montao's body vanished. He looked coldly at the defeated enemy, collapsing miserably at his feet. You might be stronger than the likes of those thugs, but in the end you're just a common street thug. After clearing the obstacles in his way, he finally shifted his gaze toward the true target of his journey, witnessing the entire horrific scene that had just unfolded. Phơ cơ run rẩy toàn thân vì sợ hãi, không thể kiểm soát nổi bản thân. Mặc kệ những lời cầu xin vô vọng đó, Demian cứ từng bước một tiến lại gần. Nỗi sợ hãi cái chết cạn kẽ khiến gã hoàn toàn mất trí. Gã hoảng loạn, đôi tay khua khoang vào không trung một cách vô ích. Đừng có lại gần đây. Tiếng thét thảm thiết vang vọng khắp khu rừng rậm rạp, rồi tan biến vào màn đêm tĩnh mịch. Một thời gian khá dài đã trôi qua kể từ đêm xảy ra sự kiện đẫm máu ấy. Tại một văn phòng yên tĩnh giống cậu vang lên. Thưa anh, tôi xin gửi tổng cộng 6 đồng bạch kim và 650 đồng vàng vào tài khoản nhé. Việc đầu tiên Demian làm sau khi dọn dẹp xong xuôi là đi nhận tiền bảo hiểm. Cậu vừa chăm chú kiểm tra các điều khoản trong sổ sách vừa thấp giọng đáp. Tôi hiểu rồi. Sau khi hoàn tất các thủ tục cần thiết, cậu đứng lên lịch sự cúi đầu chào. Mọi việc xin nhờ cả vào ông. Người đàn ông đối diện cũng nhanh chóng đặt một tay trước ngực. Anh ta hơi khom lưng đáp lễ đầy kính trọng. Vâng, cảm ơn cậu đã tin tưởng giao phó. Nhìn theo bóng lưng cậu, anh ta ngập ngừng một lát như đang đắn đo điều gì đó. Rồi anh ta mới mao muối cất tiếng hỏi thêm. Mà, không biết tôi có thể hỏi cậu định đi đâu tiếp theo không? Nhìn chiếc xe ngựa này có vẻ như cậu sắp đi xa lắm. Demian cũng không có ý định giấu giếm kế hoạch tương lai của mình. Tôi tính đi nghĩa vụ quân sự. Câu trả lời thẳng tuột này nằm ngoài mọi dự đoán của anh ta. Đi lính sao? Cậu khẳng định để đối phương biết mình không nghe nhầm. Đúng vậy, vì tôi có vài người cần phải gặp. Trên con đường đặt hoang vắng thưa thốt bóng người chỉ có tiếng. Bánh xe ngựa đều đặn nên xuống mặt đường. Demian ngồi bên trong tòa xe ngắm nhìn cảnh vật lùi dẫn về phía sau, nghĩ về những chuyện đã qua. Khóe môi cậu bất giác cong lên đầy hoài niệm. Đồng đội của tôi ở đó thì cũng đúng, nhưng suy cho cùng quân đội mới là nơi duy nhất tôi thuộc về. Dù sao thì chỉ 5 năm nữa thôi. Cục diện sẽ thay đổi hoàn toàn. Hầu hết thanh niên trai tráng đều sẽ bị ép đi lính. Một thời kỳ chiến tranh loạn lạc mà chẳng ai né nổi đang cận kẽ rồi. Demian chậm rãi đặt bàn tay lên trước ngực. Cảm giác đau đớn tột cùng của kiếp trước chợt ùa về. Giờ đây chuyện bị phe lọi ma lực ở khu ổ chuột đã không còn xảy ra nữa. Trước khi đưa ra quyết định nhập ngũ này, cậu đã bỏ ra không ít thời gian để cân đo đồng đèm và suy xét cực kỳ kỹ càng. Thay vì đợi đến cái tuổi 25 muốn màng tự nguyện nhập ngũ từ khi còn trẻ, sẽ có lợi hơn nhiều. Trước mắt cứ lên thủ đô dùng pháp vận hành ma lực mà bản thân đã biết để huấn luyện trong 1 tuần rồi, sau đó sẽ nộp đơn vào trại huấn luyện số 3. Demian ngẩng đầu, ánh mắt sâu thẳm nhìn lên bầu trời cao rộng qua ô cửa sổ xe ngựa. Lần này mình sẽ không để thời đại xoay như chồng chóng nữa. Cậu quyết tâm tự tay đập tan xiềng xích số phận, mà chính mình sẽ là người làm chủ nó. Một tuần sau, bức tường thành kiên cố cùng những tháp cảnh cao vút của thủ đô cuối cùng cũng hiện ra trước mắt. Tiếng ngon thương được bóc vải thô, đâm mạnh vào những tấm bia gỗ vang lên những âm thanh trầm đục. Những binh lính và người có mặt xung quanh không nén nổi sự kinh ngạc. Thằng nhóc đó là sao vậy? Nhìn mắt búng ra sữa, mà học chiêu đó ở đâu thể nhỉ? Damian chẳng thèm để tâm đến những lời xì xào, toàn bộ tâm trí đều dồn vào từng đường thương. Cầu thủ thương về cúi đầu nhìn xuống lòng bàn tay vốn mềm mại này, vì dùng lực quá độ mà đã rách ra thế này. Có cần phải băng bó lại không ta? Cậu khẽ tặc lưỡi đầy bất lực. Quả nhiên cơ thể lúc này vẫn còn non nớt quá. Damian có chút phiền não và không thoải mái với sự yếu ớt của bản thân ở thời điểm hiện tại, khác một trời một vực với bàn tay chài sạn ngày trước. Một người đàn ông đứng quan sát từ nãy đến giờ đã không thể giữ được sự kiên nhẫn thêm nữa, vừa đưa tay lên miệng hồ khan vài tiếng để bắt chuyện. Cậu là người đến ứng tuyển binh sĩ à? Damian dùng động tác lịch sử quay người lại. Vâng, đúng thế ạ. Demon bổ qua những thủ tục chào hỏi xã giao rườm rà, mà lập tức đi thẳng vào vấn đề chính. Thương pháp của cậu ra dáng lắm đấy. Học ở đâu ra vậy? Trong lòng Damian thoáng dâng lên một tia cảnh giác. Bớ ông ta nhận ra đây là vương quốc đệ nhất thương pháp rồi sao? Vương quốc đệ nhất thương pháp? Cái tên nghe thì hơi buồn cười, nhưng nó lại là thương pháp phổ biến nhất của binh lính vương quốc. Bộ não nhạy bén của cậu lập tức nảy sợ. Để tìm một lý do hợp lý nhằm lấp liệm cho qua chuyện, đây là thương pháp do người cha quá cố truyền lại cho tôi ạ. Draymond cảm thấy mình đã mạo phạm đến chuyện gia đình của người khác. Tôi lỡ lời hỏi chuyện không nên rồi, cho tôi xin lỗi nhé. Damian vẫn đứng im tại chỗ, toàn thân toát lên khí khái chính trực và cương nghị. Dạ không có gì đâu ạ. Từ nhờ cha đã luôn tự hào về quân đội, nên tôi cũng bị ảnh hưởng từ ông và quyết định đi lính. Cách ứng xử trung chắc, khéo léo cùng lý tưởng cao đẹp của cậu đã hoàn toàn ghi điểm tuyệt đối trong mắt đối phương. Đầu rồi nhé. Damian không khỏi ngơ ngác chớp mắt hỏi lại. Đà! Raymond giật mình nhận ra bản thân vừa lộ lời hé lộ chuyện không nên nói. À, ta nói nhầm thôi. Để chữa ngưỡng, anh ta gượng gạo chuyển sang hướng mới. Mà cậu tên là gì thế? Cậu đứng thẳng lưng theo tác phong quân đội, một tay đưa ra sau hông dõng dạc, tự giới thiệu bản thân. Tôi là Damian. Demon mỉm cười đầy hài lòng bước tới vỡ mạnh lên vai cậu như một lời khích lệ. Được rồi, chúc cậu có kết quả tốt nhé. Nhìn theo bóng lưng của người đàn ông đang sai bước đi ra xa, giận cậu lịch sự hơi cúi đầu nói vọng theo. Vâng, tôi xin cảm ơn. Ngay khi không gian xung quanh vừa yên tĩnh trở lại, Damian suddenly froze. He could feel a warm, smoldering heat radiating from his lower abdomen, constantly intensifying and spreading throughout his entire body. This feeling, Damian couldn't hold back his emotions and broke into a joyfully radiant smile. Finally, I can use mana now. The Danford family's mana accumulation technique, a secret method created by a Danford genius 15 years in the future, had incredibly strict requirements, yet it was legendary. It was the most effective method ever created. Familiar, heartwarming memories from his past life suddenly flashed through Damian's mind, because in that previous life his mana core had shattered. So I risked everything to train with it, clinging to a faint hope that it might work. The image of his comrade Jaren appeared in his memory, scratching his head and complaining in his goofy way. Captain, why do you keep throwing yourself at that training method? Even Bargain, standing nearby, had the same question, shrugging in agreement. Besides, you can't even use mana right. Teased by his subordinates, he shot them a sharp, intimidating glare. What was that, you little brats? A light breeze blew it across the training ground, pulling Damian back to reality. Back then, I was always getting teased like that. But it really wasn't in vain. The emergence of mana helped ease half the anxiety in his heart. Now he just needed to pass the exam. Damian stopped training and scanned the vast training field, spotting a group of people gathered together, buzzing with conversation. He walked slowly toward the crowd. Now that he thought about it, was he at this training camp number 3? Damian smiled faintly as he thought of his comrade who had been through life and death with him back then. His heart was full of anticipation. He wondered what he looked like now. In the middle of the vast training ground, the applicants were arranged in neat rows. The first test was to lift a stone. It sounded simple enough, but hoisting a 30-kilogram rock over one's head was no easy feat. This was a great way to weed out the rookies who were all enthusiasm, but no substance. Damian gathered all his strength. He channeled all his power into his arms to lift the heavy stone high above his head. Let's do this. The proctor standing nearby immediately recorded it in his notebook and announced in a booming voice, Candidate Damian pass. A few drops of sweat trickled down his cheeks, but Damian's expression remained unchanged. Once one reached 1-star mana, this challenge was nothing. And just like that, the first test was over. The next part was Jabo's turn. He took a deep breath to fill his lungs and used his thunderous voice to shout to the entire field, now on to the second test. Demian stood small amidst the crowd of tall, muscular soldiers keeping quiet to listen to the announcement. The endurance run was about to officially begin. Jabo started explaining the rules briefly. The time limit is 1 hour and 30 minutes. You must finish the race before time runs out. Bumping into other candidates and minor collisions are permitted, but absolutely no attacking one another. He had known about this rule from his past life and immediately saw through the plot hidden behind this seemingly humanitarian regulation. It was exactly because of that rule that there were definitely proctors disguised and running among the crowd. Sure enough, when Demian swept his gaze across them, he noticed a few individuals who possessed an aura and a presence completely different from the rest. Jabo loudly concluded his speech with a stern warning. Furthermore, anyone who strays off the designated track will be disqualified immediately. So remember that well. Not only was he not rattled, but the corners of his mouth curled into a knowing smile. This test was going to be fun. On the ground, a bright red chalk line was drawn to mark the starting point of the race. While Demian was warming up his muscles, a teenager suddenly approached him. "Are we in the same group?" He stopped and looked around as if to confirm. "Me." The other person nodded repeatedly, full of excitement, confirming, "Yes, you, I've been watching you for a while now." Demian felt confused about the boy's true intentions. "Why were you watching me?" He silently observed the person in front of him. Wait, his face looked familiar. Before Demian could think deeper and search through his memories, Offal took the initiative to step closer. "Do you even have to ask?" He intentionally lowered his voice to a whisper in Demian's ear. "You know how to use mana, don't you?" Demian cautiously took a step back to keep a safe distance from the stranger. In his head, he quickly analyzed the situation. There was no law against commoners using mana, but usually if commoners could use it without a wealthy family backing them, then they must have a very special power behind them. Looking closely at the stranger's refined features, a guess suddenly popped into Demian's mind. Don't tell me this guy is... To verify his suspicion, he didn't beat around the bush and asked directly, "By the way, what's your name?" Offal was a bit surprised by the sudden question and pointed his index finger at his own nose. "My name," immediately after he regained his natural demeanor. He placed a hand on his chest and declared, "I am a Fel," even though he had already imagined it to some extent. When he heard that name with his own ears, Demian couldn't help but be shocked. Offal. Was he really at this training camp? The man who became a general and was titled a count at the age of 30, a legend among legends. This name to the Demian of his past life was nothing short of a thunderbolt. He was one of the most successful commoners in history. Everyone admired him. Offal reached out a hand expressing his desire to become friends. "Since there aren't many people our age here, I'm feeling a bit bored. Let's do our best, shall we?" After knowing the illustrious future status of the other person, the caution in his heart quickly vanished. "Sure." He comfortably reached out and gripped the hand waiting for him. "Well, since he's been this friendly, there's no reason for me to be hostile." After all the candidates had finished warming up, Jabo picked up a loudspeaker with one hand. Everything was set. The moment the starting horn blasted, hundreds of people surged forward all at once in just a few short heartbeats. Demian, maintaining a steady pace, was overtaken by the group behind him. Watching their long strides and wind-tearing speed, he silently thought, "Are they planning to go all out right from the start?" Other candidates in the running pack belatedly realized something was off with the lead group. "What the hell? What are those guys doing?" The undercover proctors gathered, forming a solid horizontal line running directly in front of the candidates. "Let's go, boys." The candidates behind chased with all their might while gossiping nonstop. Looks like that's the wall of lament. They say getting past that is the real test of this exam. Offal, running alongside Demian, heard this and asked skeptically, "In that case, shouldn't we just stick to their tails and pull ahead at the last minute?" Demian maintained a steady rhythm while running. "That's clearly a smart strategy, but..." Suddenly he stomped hard on the ground and his body shot forward like an arrow released from a bow. "Too bad that's not my style." Demian's sudden, reckless burst of speed left Offal completely shocked. Up at the front of this pack, the proctors were still maintaining a very stable and relaxed pace. "Just keep it steady and save your energy. After all, the real race only starts in the last 10 minutes. "Yes, sir, understood." Black's keen ears suddenly picked up the sound of rapid, heavy footsteps closing in from behind. At this rate, by the time we reach the finish line... He spun his head around sharply. Hitting his eyes was a small figure flying toward him. What kind of crazy kid is that? Jang was also distracted by the pounding footsteps. Another daredevil popped up this year. Black spoke up to give a heads up just to be safe and avoid any unexpected trouble. Don't hurt him, just intimidate him so he gets scared. He massaged the bulging muscles on his arms and cracked a sly smile. I can't promise what'll happen if he crashes into my steel shoulders, though, but I'll try to go easy on him. Yet before that smug smile could even fade, a small hand reached out from behind, gripped his shoulder, and used his weight to push off forcefully. Jang was stunned for a split second. What? Demian skillfully used Jang's shoulder as a pivot point to vault over and leave the proctors behind. They had been distracted for just a single brief second, but he had already put a considerable distance between them. When he regained his composure, Black shouted frantically, "What the hell are you doing? Block him!" The other proctors in the group also snapped out of their shock. "Yes, sir." Even without looking back, Demian could feel their heavy footsteps, chasing him closer and closer. It was true that the proctors had skills that overwhelmed the candidates, but Demian once again took a deep breath, pouring all his power into his legs to accelerate. Stretch the gap wider. They were just training camp proctors after all. Witnessing his recklessness and breathtaking breakout, Awful, running behind, couldn't help but laugh heartily. What is wrong with this kid? His own fighting spirit was also strongly stimulated by Demian's actions. I can't let him get ahead of me that easily. Awful stomped, surged forward, and left the struggling candidates behind to chase after Demian's back. The other average candidates, watching the whole performance, were completely stunned. Is that even allowed? Let's follow him too. Yeah, just copy whatever he's doing. The result was that when the proctors looked back, they were completely horrified to see a wave of people surging forward with intense momentum. What the hell is this? The enthusiastic shouting of the candidates even carried over to the training field on the other side. Ji-in heard the loud noise and turned around, confused, a mix of curiosity in her heart. The situation in training ground number 2 seems a bit unusual. After gathering some intel, he whispered, "It seems there's a rather eccentric recruit who just joined. Should we send in more proctors?" The two were still debating when a low authoritative voice cut in, "Just leave them be." The two immediately stood at attention and saluted Chief Proctor Raymond. He looked toward the source of the noise and asked a rhetorical question in a nonchalant tone. "Do you want people to think we're rigging the exam results? Whether they break through or not depends on their own ability." Watching the small figure leading the race on the other side, Raymond added coolly, "And that goes for the losers too. After all, my eye for talent hasn't failed me yet." He added to himself with deep satisfaction, "I never expected him to be the type to create such an unexpected variable." His actions have provoked others to charge forward. On the battlefield, those who always lead the charge are the ones who know how to ignite the flame. At that moment on this track, Demian could feel every muscle in his body reaching its absolute limit. This was the 29th lap out of 30 total. He channeled every last bit of his strength to cross the red line, marking the final sprint. Awful, with his astonishing stamina, was also closing in right behind his back. "Hey, Demian!" He glanced sideways, slightly distracted, to talk to Awful. "You look pretty energetic, huh?" Awful seized the chance to lean in, whispering curiously into Demian's ear. "Was this your plan from the start?" Demian didn't quite grasp the deeper meaning behind the question yet. "What do you mean?" Awful tilted his chin toward the other candidates who were collapsing in corners along the track. "If we didn't know how to use mana, we'd be in as sorry a state as them." Demian tried to regulate his breathing, a faint smirk playing on his lips. With his trump card already in hand, why not put it to use? Awful was finding this new acquaintance increasingly intriguing. "You really are one interesting guy." But as they spoke, both of them crossed the finish line of the final leg at the exact same moment. "You're just like me after all." The official at the finish line was still stunned, finally managing to stammer out the results. In the quiet office filled with documents, a question suddenly rang out, brimming with keen interest. "I heard an interesting kid just joined training camp number 3. In a nearby room, Casson stood with his hands behind his back, nodding seriously. "That's right, Coach. Raymond contacted me about that boy. He said the kid is only 13 years old." That piece of information immediately caught the listener's attention. He placed his hands on the desk and stood up. "If someone as picky as Raymond calls him interesting..." He paused for a brief moment as if weighing the value of that assessment. "Then I'm starting to get a little curious myself." Leon narrowed his eyes, exuding an invisible pressure as he asked, "So, what's the kid's name?" At the same time, in the tall building nearby, a group of people had gathered as if something had happened. The center of attention was a massive notice board. After reading the contents, one person clutched their head and groaned, "Damn it, how could I have failed? No way." What about you? Amidst the wails, there were plenty who couldn't hide their joy. I passed. I finally got to see that scene again. Demian couldn't help but feel puzzled. Was it really worth getting that excited over? The scene before his eyes involuntarily pulled him back to the hardships of his past life. He remembered the wartime when being drafted was common, and everyone did whatever it took to dodge their service. They used to constantly check their soles and heels for blisters. In the midst of the bustling crowd, he rested his chin on his hand and pondered quietly. Come to think of it, life is still peaceful nowadays. Suddenly, someone called his name Demian. Hearing his name, he turned around with a questioning look. It was Awful, who immediately waved excitedly. Congrats, man! We're in the same class now, right? The words made Demian quickly look toward the notice board. Really? You passed too? Awful nodded. Yeah, that's right. I even checked the list. Your name is on it. And while talking, he casually pointed to the very top of the board. It's right at the top. Demian, 13 years old. He nodded. I just saw it. After getting through such a competitive selection process together, the atmosphere between them had grown friendlier. We should look out for each other. Even so, we might not get assigned to the same unit, though. Facing that enthusiasm, he remained calm. I'm looking forward to it, too. As they left the crowded area, Awful suddenly remembered something and turned to ask, We've got one more week until we head to camp. What are you planning to do during this time? Demian didn't answer immediately. He took a few seconds to think before replying slowly. I'll probably be pretty busy. Looking off into the distance, he added with a hint of mystery, I've got a few things to take care of this week. Hearing that, Afel's curiosity was immediately piqued. He stepped closer and threw an arm around his shoulders. What on earth could be that important? He just shook his head. Nothing major. Just need to pick up a few necessities before heading to camp. Hearing that, Awful remembered something important and quickly added, Now that you mention it, those issue combat boots are stiff as a board. They say you absolutely have to prepare extra insoles for your soles and heels. That information made him go, oh really? These things were nothing new to Demian. He already knew all about that from his bitter experiences back in the day. But, to avoid appearing strange to his current identity, he still replied sincerely, Thanks though, I appreciate the tip. I'll keep that in mind. Awful grinned, clearly pleased. Don't sweat it. Not wanting the conversation to stay focused on himself, he casually shifted the subject. What about you? What are you planning to do this week? The sudden question made him pause slightly. Me, I've got a few things to do too. Seeing the unnatural expression, Demian realized he was hiding something. The sudden question caught him off guard, causing him to hesitate. Me, I've got a few things to take care of. Seeing that unnatural reaction, Demian realized the other guy was hiding something. Are you sure? Though Demian had no intention of digging deeper since he wasn't interested in meddling in other people's business. Yeah, go ahead and get ready for your own matters. See you next week? I'm heading out first. He waved goodbye as well. Yeah, see you soon. Just then a strange figure quietly approached from behind. It was only when they were a few steps away that the person slowly spoke up. Who's that? Hearing a familiar voice, Afel immediately turned around. Alan! He involuntarily recalled the conversation the two of them had not long ago. Demian, why do you want to enlist? This took him by surprise. Huh! Seeing that reaction, he continued to explain what had been bothering him this whole time. If you can use mana to this extent, you don't look like an ordinary person at all. Hearing that, Demian glanced to the side and casually retorted, Are you cleverly bragging that you aren't exactly a nobody either? That blunt counterattack made Afel just smile awkwardly. Does it sound like that? Footsteps echoed continuously on the ground. After a few beats of silence, he replied, Because this is the only place I belong. Recalling that dialogue, the corners of Afel's mouth curled up involuntarily. He was the same. He surely had his own hardships that were difficult to share with others. He then turned around thinking to himself, It's just that I have a feeling this is someone I'll be bumping into for a long time. That remark left Alan looking confused. What was that? But he just shook his head, having no intention of explaining further. It's nothing. Let's go. The old man bowed respectfully and replied, Yes, young master. The things are prepared over there. The familiar title, once it hit his ears, made Alan's footsteps suddenly halt as he sighed in frustration. Alan, I told you not to call me young master in places like this. The old man leaned on his cane and followed with an apologetic tone. Yes, I apologize. Bright sunlight blanketed every rooftop. Along the crowded street, amidst the endless stream of people, Demian walked leisurely. He kept scanning his surroundings. It's hard to believe. Lively bargaining mixed with laughter, creating a vibrant atmosphere. Can't you do something to help me, for heaven's sake? I already told you there's nothing I can do. He was a bit stunned. The capital in his memory in a fleeting moment saw the images of people with sunken faces from starvation and weak pleas rushing back. Please, even just a dry piece of bread would be enough. Looking at the bustling street before him, Demian calculated silently in his heart. This atmosphere would in any case change within the next 5 years. Before that time comes, I must quickly prepare as much as possible. As that thought surfaced, a series of plans were quickly reorganized. To do that, first I need to find the Yuk Trading Company. When the era of war arrives, all kinds of weapons and practical artifacts on the battlefield along with food will become the most important things. That is when the role of merchant guilds becomes crucial. This made Demian suddenly remember something from the past. The richest merchant guild on this continent was indeed the Yuk Trading Company. Amidst rolling mountain ranges stretching to the horizon, an army unit was temporarily setting up camp to rest after many days of continuous marching. The quiet atmosphere was quickly broken when a soldier came running from afar in a panic. "Captain, it looks like relief supplies are being delivered over there." He gestured toward a caravan of horse-drawn carriages approaching. The person was skeptical. "Isn't that the Yuk Trading Company?" Hearing that, Tyson also cast his gaze and spoke slowly. "Rumor has it that's the wealthiest merchant guild out there right now." That remark immediately made the person next to him dissatisfied. "Damn it, while our side is out here risking our lives on the battlefield, they are—" But before the conversation could go any further, Demian cut in. "If it weren't for the wheat and weapons they sell to us, and you also know they are donating for free, right?" Hearing that, he looked flustered. I know, it's just a bit bitter, that's all." Speaking of which, his gaze shifted back to the supply-laden carriages being transported over. But constantly doing charity with such large amounts of money is not an easy thing to do. Putting that conversation aside for a moment, Demian called out loudly to his teammates, "Everyone hurry up and come get the relief supplies!" A chorus of responses immediately rang out from across the camp. Understood. Standing there observing the scene, Demian quietly watched each person happily receiving the food and necessary supplies. In the midst of everyone being busy, Ethan walked up from behind and suddenly spoke up. "Captain, it seems that person is the master of the Yuk Trading Company." Hearing that, he immediately looked in the direction the other pointed and confirmed, "The guild master." Ethan pointed to the person standing and busily giving directions at the caravan. "Yes, do you see the person wearing the white cloak standing in the front row?" "No, but look at that guy. He looks like nothing more than an arrogant jerk." As his consciousness returned to reality, the harsh sunlight was still flowing across the street in front of him. Leaning his back against the wall by the road, Demian silently reorganized the information he knew. They said the Yuk Trading Company had been doing charity since before the war even broke out. Out of the 40 merchant guilds in the capital, if we narrow it down, there are probably only about 7 left, especially since they also engage in charity work. So I'll start checking the largest ones first. As the final rays of the day vanished behind the horizon, a golden hue slowly blanketed the city. After a long day of roaming around, Demian stopped in front of a merchant guild's entrance. Tucked away at the end of the street, is this the last one? With that thought, he crossed the threshold and stepped inside. "Excuse me, is anyone here?" No sooner had his call echoed than an elderly man slowly stepped out from the back. "How can I help you, young man?" As soon as Demian saw him, he immediately concluded in his heart, this really is the last one. He bowed respectfully and spoke politely. "I heard the Homo Guild does charity work, so I wanted to come and discuss an investment for a good cause." That answer made the old man chuckle with genuine interest. A young person with such commendable thoughts. He moved toward the tea table. Following the man's gesture, Demian thought to himself, everything so far has been a dud, but I still have to check each one. As he slowly sat down, the man wore a friendly smile and introduced himself. "I am the head of the Homo Guild Ruth." Upon hearing that name, Demian couldn't help but freeze. Ruth. Outwardly, he remained calm, but inside a tidal wave of emotions surged. Did I finally find him? Suppressing the thoughts swirling in his head, he quickly replied, "Yes, my name is Demian." The man nodded and gestured toward the seat opposite him. "Yes, it's a pleasure to meet you. Let's sit and talk, shall we?" As soon as he was seated, Demian could not wait any longer, so he hurriedly asked, This might be a bit impolite to ask, but do you have a son? That question left Ruth a bit confused. He looked at the boy for a few seconds before suddenly laughing heartily. I don't have a son, but I do have a daughter who is still quite immature. This surprised Demian. A daughter? What is this? He lamented internally. Another disappointment. Just as he finished speaking, an unexpected voice caught Demian's attention. The voice made Demian instinctively turn his head to look back. Dad, I'm home. Gil stepped in, and Demian recognized her immediately as the head of the guild from his past life. Did I finally find her? Ruth pointed at the boy and introduced him. Say hello, Gil. This is Demian. He's here to invest in our charity fund. Gil reached up to adjust her hair and smiled. Nice to meet you, Demian, she asked with a hopeful face. Are you really here to invest in our charity work? Demian looked up and replied, Yes, that's right. He touched his chin, quietly pondering, something isn't right. The head of the guild, Ruth, was clearly a man in my previous life. But the two of them look exactly alike, and their ages match too. Demian looked at Gil, scrutinizing her carefully. Don't tell me this beautiful face is actually a girl. How did she take over the guild using the name Ruth? She looked at him with a serious, inquisitive face. If I may ask, how much capital were you planning to invest? The guild uses funds differently depending on the amount. He covered his mouth with his fist, pretending to be nonchalant. For now, I would like to invest 300 gold coins. Depending on how things progress, I will pour in more capital later. Gil was startled and covered her mouth with her hands. 300 gold coins. Ruth also couldn't believe it and confirmed, Are you serious about that? His eyes narrowed as he held up a hand. But since this is an investment and not a donation, do you have any specific conditions for this money? Demian gave a bright smile and clasped his hands together. My condition is that I want to hold a portion of the Homo Guild's shares in exchange for receiving a share of the profits to recover. The investment capital. Ruth stared intently at him, marveling in shock. A little kid who's willing to play for such high stakes. He wondered to himself, at this age, having that much money, could it be? He then asked cautiously, If it's not too much trouble, may I ask where this money comes from? Demian closed his eyes and replied dismissively, You don't need to worry about that. I just want to use the inheritance from my late parents for something useful. Upon hearing this, Ruth quickly bowed his head to apologize. I understand. Please forgive my rudeness. He smiled and waved his hand. Oh, it's nothing at all. I completely understand. Looking straight at Demian, he requested, I think we need to hold a meeting regarding the guild shares. Can we give you a definitive answer then? Not caring at all, he agreed. Yes, of course. Then see you all later. As he was leaving, he saw Ruth holding his chest in deep thought. What's wrong, father? He reflected on Demian's mature demeanor during the negotiation. Weren't you surprised? The boy is only 13 years old. Ruth couldn't help but remember. But that gaze was no joke. He was certainly not an ordinary child. He let out a long sigh while clutching his chest. What a pity. If that kid were just 5 years older, the two of you would be a match made in heaven. Gia's face flushed bright red upon hearing that, and she shouted, Dad! Inside the building, the sound of her embarrassment echoed, Dad, what on earth are you talking about? Rook didn't even pay her any mind, just chuckled and teased. Who knows, maybe the kid likes someone older than him. Gia yelled angrily, Stop it right now, Dad! After finishing business with the Homo Trade Guild, time flew by like a wild dog running across a field. In the blink of an eye, the day of enlistment had arrived. Demian stood alone in front of the main gate. He raised his head, looked ahead, and sighed. Today is truly a brand new start. Demian reached his hand out toward the sun high above. Even if his previous life had vanished into thin air for nothing, this life would be different. He clenched his fist, tightly determined. This time I will be the one to swallow this entire empire whole. A while later, Demian carried his luggage into his quarters. I'm in the 3rd Training Company 1st Platoon. Right. He turned around to check out his surroundings. He didn't see a single familiar face. Did Afel get assigned to a different platoon? Demian placed his luggage on the bed and muttered to himself, There's no one around here close to my age, though. What a bummer. Just then, an excited voice boomed out, making him look over. Great to meet you all. A man stood at the door with his hands on his hips. I'm the one who will be in charge of you for the next month. I am Platoon Leader Brian of the 1st Platoon. Then Brian held up 3 fingers. Listen up. Right now, we're going to start checking your personal belongings, food, and drinks. His expression darkened as he curled those 3 fingers into a fist, threatening, "Luxury items especially, anyone who brought alcohol or cigarettes, you'd better step forward and confess immediately. Anyone I catch trying to hide something will get to experience a very enjoyable time." Demian watched as the guys in the neighboring bed started panicking and shouting, "I quit smoking, but I grabbed it by mistake. The shopkeeper told me bringing alcohol wouldn't get me caught." Demian glanced over at them and sighed inwardly. "You idiots, if you're going to buy it, hide it properly or don't bring it at all." Brian walked over and barked coldly, "Dump everything out of your bags now." After a while, he stood in front of Demian's bed, looked at the pile of luggage, and announced, "Nothing unusual here." Brian rubbed his chin, looked him over, and asked, "Hey, how old are you anyway?" "You look so baby-faced," Demian calmly replied. "I'm 13. The guy Kai, who was sitting on his bed, gasped in shock. 13. He cursed loudly. "What the hell is this era coming to? They're even letting a little brat like this into the army now." Logan also huffed and puffed, yelling, "Do you think life is a joke?" He saw Demian staring at him, his face darkening. "What are you looking at? You want to talk back, you little brat?" Demian immediately closed his eyes, thinking to himself, "No point in wasting words with a guy like him." But his eyes flashed with a bright red light. He glared at Kai. "I'll remember this face. I'll make sure he finds out exactly how painful it is to get beaten to a pulp by a kid." Logan, sitting next to him, clutched himself. "What was that?" Suddenly, I feel a chill down my spine. Brian's voice rang out, "You there?" He walked up to him and demanded, "Dump your entire backpack out. Let's see it." Logan panicked, explained, "This is everything, sir." Brian's expression darkened as he leaned in close to his face. "Do you need me to personally search your bag, huh?" Logan immediately scrambled to take everything out of his bag. No need, Commander. I'm dumping it out right now. This, and also..." The man with his hands on his hips threatened coldly, "I'm warning you in advance. Anyone who dares to hide something only for me to find the contraband myself." The guys thinking about Brian's words turned pale with fear. "Be prepared to run!" Around the training field all night long. He looked at the people around him and urged, "Hurry up, dump it all out." Demian saw this and felt highly satisfied. Serves them right. After a while, Brian paced back and forth and declared, "That covers the gear check." He turned to look at the group and announced, "Now I need to appoint a temporary student platoon leader to command the soldiers in my absence." Brian reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. He took a look at it and was stunned. He exclaimed, "We have a recruit in this platoon who passed with an incredibly high score." After putting the paper down, Brian looked at the group and shouted, "Demian!" "Who is Demian? Step forward and let's see you." His gaze drifted toward Kay, who was sulking in a corner. "Is it that guy from earlier? To be a student platoon leader character is just as important as ability." Brian walked up to him and asked, "You're Demian, right?" Just then Demian stepped forward. "That's me." Startled, he whipped his head around. If it wasn't him, then who? Brian's eyes widened, freezing in place as he clutched the paper, stuttering, "Wait, you said you were just 13, right?" Demian calmly confirmed, "Yes, that's right." Kai glared, his voice dripping with venom. "A snot-nosed brat like that wants to be a student squad leader. Are you kidding me? Since when did the military turn into a daycare?" Brian put his hands on his hips and glanced over. "Order in the corner now." Kai didn't back down, arguing, "But I'm not wrong, Commander." Brian stepped forward until he was right in front of him. "The student squad leader represents me. Aren't they supposed to prove they have the leadership skills to do that?" Kai pointed a finger at Demian with utter contempt. "If we let a kid take charge like that, our squad's discipline will go to hell." Demian's lips curled into a faint smile. "I didn't even want this troublesome position anyway. But this guy just loves picking fights, doesn't he?" Demian made a silent decision. "Fine. Let's see how far I can push this guy." He tilted his head with a provocative smirk. "I'm confident I can do a better job than some muscle-bound brute who's all brawn and no brains." "You little brat. What did you just say?" Brian glanced over, asking, "You're Kai, right?" Kai replied calmly, "Yes, Commander." "For now, I'll keep my position," he added. Brian reached out and firmly grabbed Kai by the collar, radiating a killing intent. He stared him down and roared, "If you ever belittle a comrade by calling them a snot-nosed brat, or use any language like that again, it won't end with just a simple warning. Are we clear?" Kai looked down, avoiding his gaze, his voice low. "Clear, Commander." Brian looked toward Demian, adding, "However, he has a point. The position of student squad leader demands real leadership ability. Kai raised a hand, proposing, "How about this then, Commander? Why don't you let me—" He stood before Demian, arms crossed, boasting, "Why not let me spar with this kid? Whoever wins takes the chair. That would prove both his ability and his authority, wouldn't it?" Brian looked to Demian, asking if he agreed. Demian closed his eyes, thinking I might as well use this opportunity to reset the discipline around here. "Fine. Sounds good to me." Demian pointed at Kai and chirped, "So I just need to beat this blockhead to a pulp, right?" Kai's face flushed with fury. "Blockhead." Demian looked at the others in the room. "Do you all agree to these terms?" They all answered in unison, "Agreed." Brian gestured for the group to leave. "Then no need to drag this out. Everyone follow me to the shooting range for the match." Brian looked at Kai's arrogance and Demian's calm demeanor, declaring that the fight would start immediately. Brian looked at the two of them. "The rule is that if an opponent surrenders, the match ends immediately. Are you ready?" Kai smirked triumphantly. "I'm ready." Demian closed his eyes and nodded. "I'm ready." Brian declared, "Then begin." Kai rubbed his shoulder, muttering to himself, "Bullying a kid makes me feel kinda bad." Demian sighed. "Quit whining and just come at me, you blockhead." A vein popped on Kai's forehead as he roared, "You little brat!" Kai's eyes flashed a bright crimson as he charged forward. "The reason you're gonna get beaten like a dog today is all because of that mouth of yours." Demian stood perfectly still, calmly evaluating him. "His speed is better than I thought. Compared to the soldiers in my past life, he's actually got some skill." He watched as Kai reached him. Demian kept his eyes locked on the fist coming toward him, thinking, "Is that all you've got?" He leaned his body to the side, dodging. "There's no way you can beat me." Kai couldn't believe his eyes. "You dodged it. It's like you knew exactly where I was going to throw my punch." Kai gathered his strength to throw another. "Looks like you picked up a few tricks somewhere, huh? But there's no way you're dodging this one." Demian tilted his head and dodged again gently. "Too slow." Kai slammed his fists together, shouting, "If you can dodge, then I'll just plow right into you." He launched himself at Demian with everything he had. Demian closed his eyes, feeling the wind of Kai's hands as he slipped past him once again. "Where the hell?" Kai shouted, only for Demian's voice to come from behind him. "Right here!" Kai let out a cry of pain as Demian slammed a strike into his chest. Demian looked up at him, thinking, a direct hit like that? It'll be hard for him to stay standing. He watched Kai let out a pained groan and drop to one knee. "Tougher than I thought, aren't you?" Kai's face darkened and he lunged forward again, frantic. "You bastard, I'm going to kill you!" Demian leaped backward out of harm's way. His attack should be enough to finish him off by now. Then he threw a punch straight into Kai's gut. Demian watched as he clutched his stomach, collapsed to the ground, and slammed his head hard against the floor, knocked out cold on the spot. Demian lightly brushed the dust off his hands. Looks like this oaf learned his lesson the hard way. Right after that, he shot a fierce glare around. "Anyone else want to try?" The crowd stood there looking at each other, but not a soul dared to step up. Just then, Brian's voice boomed out, declaring the sparring session over. Recruit Demian wins. From now on, Recruit Demian is officially the student platoon leader. A while later, Kai walked out of the infirmary, closing the door behind him gently. "I'll be going now." He looked annoyed, thinking to himself, I never imagined there'd be a day I'd get carried to the infirmary unconscious like this. Kai couldn't help but replay that punch in his head. He couldn't remember anything after getting hit in the ribs. Did he really lose consciousness from that kid's very first attack? Kai stood in front of the door, silently reflecting, I honestly thought in this place. And there wasn't a single person who could be my match. And yet I ended up losing so miserably. The group inside the room jumped as they saw him walk in, looking dark. They peeked at Kai, whispering to each other, What now? Should we stop him? We definitely have to stop him. If we just let him do as he pleases, he's going to end up back in the infirmary again. Suddenly, Kai walked up behind Demian and called out to him. As Demian turned, Kai knelt on the ground, bowed his head, and shouted respectfully, I admit my defeat. From this day on, I'll consider you my big brother. Demian froze, shocked, thinking, What the hell? Why is this guy suddenly acting like this? Did I accidentally hit his head too hard earlier? Then Kai looked up, speaking earnestly. You're the youngest person I've ever fought, but you're the strongest. Respecting someone stronger than myself is only natural. Kai's voice echoed, Please accept me as your subordinate. Demian was stunned. He thought the guy was just arrogant and rude, but turns out he's actually someone who knows how to show respect. He reached out a hand to make peace. No need to call me big brother. Just call me Demian. Demian smiled warmly and added, let's do our best from now on, Kai. Kai reached out and shook his hand. I look forward to fighting alongside you, Demian. A week at the barracks flew by. After Demian's group finished their training, Brian stood with his hands on his hips, watching them and shouting, don't stop. Keep your eyes on the back of the person in front of you and keep running. Demian couldn't help but remark that the instructors were packing in insane training, making time fly by like the wind. Once everyone finished, Brian raised his hand and announced, training is over for today. Troops disperse back to the barracks, and you, Demian, come with me. Demian heard this and followed him, wondering, what's this about? Where are we going all of a sudden? Demian followed Brian and stood before a room wondering, the administration office. Are they going to make an announcement? He saw the line of people standing straight inside and wondered, wait, those guys are here too. Demian stepped inside, thinking, might as well go in and see what the announcement is first. Mason saw him covered his mouth and exclaimed, where did this little shrimp come from? Oh crap, I said that out loud. I was supposed to keep that in my head. Demian looked up at him. The guy was so skinny he looked like a scrawny toad, Demian imagined. Having this guy stand next to Kai would be hilarious. Their builds are like night and day. Mason looked annoyed and gritted his teeth. What are you staring at? Demian replied calmly. I was just curious to see how much wider those eye sockets of yours could possibly get. The guy was fuming but suddenly stopped when he heard someone cough. You little brat! Kaysen frowned and shouted to keep the peace. Order. Is this place a spot for you to act out? Mason looked furious and whispered a threat. I'll deal with you later. Up front, the voice continued. It seems all platoon leaders and troops from every unit are gathered here now. Kaysen looked straight at the crowd. The reason I called you all here today is to announce the inter-platoon tournament happening next week. This is a crucial midterm evaluation for the platoons, so platoon leaders and soldiers lead your units and prepare well. Is that clear? The soldiers below put their hands behind their backs and responded in unison, Yes, sir. Kaysen signaled for everyone to leave. All right, dismissed. Head back to the barracks. Mason walked up to Demian and shouted, Hey, you little brat! He raised his fist high, shouting threats at the kid. You have no situational awareness, do you? Careful, or one of these days you'll get beaten to a pulp. Jorah, who was standing behind him, chimed in with a sarcastic remark pointing out that he was the one who lacked awareness. We're both student platoon leaders, aren't we? Instead of acting all high and mighty because you're older, why don't you stop wasting time blabbering and go train with your own platoon? Wouldn't that be better? Mason, face red with rage, spun around and barked, If this doesn't concern you, get lost unless you want a beating too. Jorah just flashed a smile in response. That remains to be seen. Let's see who ends up getting the beating. Then he gestured to Demian, saying, Hey, forget about that lunatic, let's go. Demian replied, Yeah, let's go. As Demian walked ahead, he let out a sneer, then turned back to ask, Hey, what platoon are you in? Mason puffed out his chest arrogantly, gesturing with his thumb. 4th platoon. I'm the platoon leader of the 4th. Demian's lips curled into a bright smile. Got it. I'll remember that. See you at the team match, you idiot. As he walked down the hall, Jorah called out to him, You're Demian, right? Demian looked back surprised. How do you know my name? Jorah explained with a big grin. I've heard about you constantly from that guy Fell in my platoon. Word is you ranked first in practical skills. He gestured toward Demian and introduced himself. I'm Private Jorah, platoon leader of the 3rd. I'm counting on your skills in the upcoming team match. Demian stood with his hand on his hip and replied, No problem. After returning to their quarters, Demian said seriously, Attention, everyone. Someone walked up to him and asked, Demian, what's up? Demian's voice rang out as he explained, In 1 week there's going to be a team match between platoons and we... He thought about that flag of victory and declared, We have to take first place at any cost. Demian clapped his hands together forcefully. And there's one thing you all must remember. Out of the 3 teams we're facing... He held up 2 fingers and added, We are going to completely crush the 4th platoon, especially. Demian made a throat-slitting motion with his thumb, instructing, The platoon leader of the 4th. Make sure you beat that guy to a bloody pulp. Understand? Demian looked at the crowd gathered before him, thinking, As soon as the 2nd week of training began, the atmosphere on the practice field changed completely. Nolan stood there looking serious. Staring at the documents in his hand, he said, The Army's goal is to win the competition, starting this week. You will learn about battle formations, something crucial for the match. He narrowed his eyes at the crowd and reminded them, Even though this is a team competition, we will still award individual points to soldiers who display excellent skills, so try your best to stand out. The group shouted in unison, "Yes, sir!" Demian couldn't help but ponder, individual points, huh? That's great. Anyone in this training camp wanted high marks to get assigned to their preferred branch. His lips curled into a happy smile, thinking, I'll just have to give it my all. Then Nolan gestured in the air. Today we're learning the triangle formation, an attack formation used specifically to pierce enemy lines. Demian thought to himself, a triangle formation, huh? Information on it immediately flooded his mind. This formation has incredible destructive power like a giant arrowhead. But the drawback is, if the tip of the spear collapses, the rest of the unit falls apart too. Demian glanced at Kai beside him. Still, if the person leading is strong enough, it creates devastating power. It's lucky my squad has the perfect guy to be the tip of that spear. Just then, Nolan put his hands behind his back and declared, Now we're going to practice the triangle formation right away. Divide into 2 groups and quickly get into formation. Move it. Demian looked at him and said, Kai, you go over there, I'll lead this side. He snorted. I won't lose this time. Demian walked in front of the group and waved his hand. All right. Everyone come here. I'm going to show you a trick for the triangle formation that the instructor just mentioned. Chatan asked, looking skeptical. What kind of trick have you ever done this before? Demian replied calmly. My father was in the military, so I've studied it before. The group huddled together as he began to explain. The guys on the other side will definitely line up in a standard triangle formation just like the instructor said. And when they charge... Asian clenched his fist and shouted, That sounds awesome! Chiton raised his fist, grinning, Let's give it a try. Hearing that Demian put his hands on his hips and called out, You guys who are strong, stand right behind me. And the shorter guys hold your shields to cover the flanks. He gripped his shield tight, looked back and reminded them, Remember to hold your shields high, at least as high as your heads. The group answered in unison, Got it. Demian looked up on the other side. They looked like they had prepared a solid defense, but it was all going to be for nothing. He calmly concluded that they should just charge straight through, then looked back and ordered his team, Don't slow down. Let's end this in one go. Nolan waved his hand to signal the start of the match. The sound of the whistle blew, and footsteps echoed loudly across the field. Mia looked over and smiled to herself, thinking, For their first time, their defensive stance is actually pretty good. They were advancing without breaking their formation at all. He furrowed his brows tightly. All right, then. They were about to close in on Kai's formation. He shouted loudly to urge his team on, Pick up the pace, guys! On the other side, Kai's group kept their rhythm shouting continuously. A purple glow radiated from Demian's body as he thought to himself, Now it's my turn. He had avoided using mana during endurance training, but he told himself, In times like this, I have to bring it out. With a shout, he slammed his shield against Kai's with full force. Pushing forward, Demian gritted his teeth and commanded his team to shove hard and break through the gap, just like the plan. He had calculated it all in his head, if they targeted the weak spots instead of crashing. Head-on, the opponents would be rattled for a split second, and in that very moment, a voice rang out, Someone stop him! Demian's eyes lit up as he stared past them. I'll make sure you see it, he thought, focusing on the gap they had created. He yelled out, Here's our chance! Immediately after, the long spears from Demian's side struck the knees of the opposing team. Logan was knocked backward, completely caught off guard. What the hell is this? Kai turned around, watching his team members falling one by one, and screamed, What are you idiots doing? Get up now. Kai turned to face him, shouting, Damn it, I'm taking you out first. Immediately after, Demian slammed into Kai with his shield. Did you forget your opponent is me? Kai's face turned dark as he coldly roared, Get out of the way, Demian! Hearing that he raised his shield to block, asking back, You're telling me to get out of the way? With a dead serious look, the guy replied, Yes. And upon seeing Demian next to him, he shouted, Huh! Immediately after, he gently applied a powerful downward force, making Kai fall. Demian looked down from above and laughed. Kai, your physique is pretty solid, but you need to learn how to use your strength at the right time and in the right place. Nolan stood still watching the situation over there. That kid is way better than I thought. He stared at Demian's small frame. Considering how unimpressive his physique looked, it was hard to believe he was in the same batch. As for the other recruits right after that, Nolan held both arms out and declared, Stop, the winner of this practice match is Demian's team. Demian reached out his hand to praise, Good job. Kai grabbed his hand, pulled himself up, and said, Next time I'm definitely taking you down. Then he started asking, Hey Demian, What kind of strategy did you use? The people behind Kai also chimed in with questions. Were you intentionally aiming for our blind spots? How are we even supposed to block that? The crowd gathered around him noisy. Why don't we keep using this move during the squad battles? Demian looked up as the sunset drenched the area. Demian looked toward Kai and Logan, who were practicing nearby. These guys usually run straight to the barracks as soon as training ends, but now they're actually sitting down reviewing their mistakes and training together. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile. He thought to himself, this vibe is good. If we keep going like this, there's nothing to worry about for the tournament. Suddenly, an ear-piercing sound rang out. That little brat is actually the squad leader of the first squad, ha! Demian let out an inquisitive sound, looking over. Hayden pointed this way and shouted, spot on. Look at him standing there giving orders. Axton also laughed mockingly. What's wrong with those people, as if they'd ever listen to a little brat as their boss? Logan's face turned black as he looked over. What did those bastards just say, brat? Clevo was also annoyed and cursed. Those scumbags! Hayden spread his arms wide, continuing to provoke them. What else kids are called brats simple as that? Did I say something wrong? Axton chimed in, laughing. You can just look at them to see how pathetic that squad's level is. Mason stepped out from behind, laughing with contempt. Forget those guys. It's not the fault of the people following him. The fault lies with the guy who doesn't know his own limits, acting all high and mighty as a squad leader. Demian turned his head and saw him. Not again, he cursed under his breath. That guy again. Is he a masochist or something? After that, he shook his head slightly. Whatever, forget it. Why bother with small fry? Why waste energy on their provocations? Anyway, I'll just crush him when the tournament starts. Afterward, he calmly gave the order. First squad, everyone dismiss and head to the barracks. Suddenly, a loud sound erupted. What kind of sh*t are you bastards spouting, huh? Demian looked up shocked by the scene in front of him. Logan's group faces full of rage charged forward, shouting loudly, If we run into your squad in the tournament, you guys are fucking dead. Keep your eyes peeled and wait for us to come and smash you to pieces. Kai pointed his finger at Mason, aggressively declaring, especially you, the squinty-eyed guy in the front row, you'd better go pick out your coffin right now. Then he turned back fuming and asked, Demian, these assholes you just scolded, they're from the 4th squad, right? Demian was startled, then confirmed, oh yeah, that's right. Kai and the others stared at the group, smashing their fists together. Those bastards, we absolutely have to beat them to a pulp. Immediately after, the group started getting hyped up, shouting, even though it's break time, let's keep training today. When we face the 4th squad, I'm going to mop the floor with their faces. Demian looked at them and mused to himself, I didn't think they'd be this easy to provoke. But knowing he couldn't stop them, he wore a bright smile. This might actually work out in our favor. In the evening, inside Bazoot's office, he sat with his arms crossed, leaning back in his chair. Did you see anyone promising among the new recruits this time? Jamin reported with a serious expression. Sir, yes. There are a few with quite a bit of potential. But these two stand out the most. Bazoot immediately picked up the documents to read. They're both quite young, aren't they? What's special about them? I'm not entirely sure, but it seems they already know how to control mana. He was startled and questioned again. Mana, do both of those recruits have any family background? Jamin stood at attention and replied, Looking at their files, there doesn't seem to be anything special. Bazoot looked down silently, calculating. Most people who sign up for the training camp are commoners, and those mana cultivation methods cost a ton of money to learn. So for a commoner, mana is like a distant mystical power. He stared at the two men's info and muttered, Recruit Demian enlisted after losing both his parents, and Recruit Offal whose family background is just as ordinary. And it's precisely because it's so incredibly normal that it makes me feel uneasy. Immediately after, Bazoot looked up and asked, Oh, and one more thing. He stared at the two recruits' files, muttering, Recruit Demian enlisted after losing both parents, and Recruit Offal, whose background is just as plain. But it's precisely because it's too plain that it makes me uneasy. Baruth suddenly looked up, asking, Oh, by the way, I heard there was some friction between the squads earlier. Raymond closed his eyes and reported, Yes, sir. Actually, that commotion involved the rookie Demian. He thought about the Mason group's provocation. Considering Demian was too young to be a squad leader, Demon thought about the group near him and added, So the squad leaders and the members of other teams looked down on him, but the guys in Squad 1 got furious, and thanks to that, the whole team really pulled together. Barut, hearing this, asked for confirmation. So you mean the people in Squad 1 have already accepted that kid as their leader? Draymond bowed his head and affirmed, yes, sir, that is correct. Barut rested his chin on one hand and exclaimed, that's interesting. He held up a finger and wiggled it. In that case, why don't we try this? You bring... The person came to hear Barut's entire plan. After listening, Raymond was startled and asked, but sir, don't you think doing that, might backfire? He rested his head on one hand and chuckled, if that happens, it just proves that their ability only goes that far. Barut thought about the CAI group and added, but if their team spirit is strong enough, it's worth a try. His eyes glinted with greed as he declared, increase the training intensity for Squad 1 and Squad 4, the ones who were fighting to the absolute maximum for me. The CAI group suddenly flinched and looked back. What is this? Why do I suddenly have goosebumps all over? Inside the room, a person lying on the bed shouted, are you kidding me? Why are they suddenly increasing our training hours? The person next to him spoke up. Actually, I heard only our squad and Squad 4 have to do extra training as a punishment. Cater remembered today's exercises, gritted his teeth, and said, they even added crawling drills. Another person complained, is it really necessary to punish us this hard just for cursing a few times? I turned his head back to look at Demian and asked, is this even remotely fair? Hearing that you silently pondered crawling exercises, huh? Demian closed his eyes and thought to himself, I already know what they're up to. Then he asked back, fair or not, what else can we do? He stood up, walked toward the group, and questioned, you guys think you're on a vacation? Demian turned to look at the group and added, these crawling drills will definitely make your bodies ache way more, but if we can get through this, our stamina will leave the other squads in the dust. Everyone now understood the true purpose of this exercise. Right. Shivo arched an eyebrow and cursed under his breath. Damn it, even that kid can figure that out. Someone else couldn't help but think, if I complain here, I'll be losing to a 13-year-old kid, huh? Demian closed his eyes and laughed. It'll probably hurt like hell the first time. But I've got your back, so give it everything you've got. Then someone else complained, but they aren't actually going to make us crawl on that gravel-filled field, are they? He looked up and asked, and what you want them to lay out comfortable cushions for you to lie on? CAI looked on in astonishment. Hey, Demian, the way you talk, it sounds like you've done this plenty of times before, right? You closed your eyes and thought, well, I've done it constantly. In his mind, Demian recalled his past life. I had to drag my body across the ground more times than I can count just to stay alive. Immediately after, he sighed quietly. But that's not the real meaning of crawling exercises. Demian realized, forcing us to crawl during an already exhausting training schedule is to wear us down. With his body covered in scratches and bruises, one person grabbed another by the collar and roared, "What the hell did you just say? You son of a—" Demian silently mused. The mental strain makes everyone irritable, and the squad's internal unity will inevitably start to fracture. He looked at the group and pondered, overcoming the pressure caused by this exercise. That is the true purpose of adding this training. They just want to see which side Squad 1 or Squad 4 can handle the heat better. Demian squatted at the foot of the bed and pulled out a box. Since their intentions are this obvious, there's no way I'm just going to sit here and take it. Then he shouted loudly, "Brothers, pull out all the socks you were issued." Dieter, hearing this, asked skeptically, "Socks? Why are you suddenly pulling out socks?" His voice echoed. Now Demian smiled brightly and pulled hard on the socks in his hands. "I'm going to perform a magic trick to serve as a lucky charm for this training." The next morning, the instructor stared down at them and asked, "Is Squad 1 all accounted for?" The voices of Demian's team rang out. "Yes, instructor." He looked down and introduced himself. "All right, I'm Nielsen, the instructor in charge of your crawling drills. Today we're learning the low crawl technique. Teaching assistants, take your positions." Nielsen stood with his hands behind his back, looking at the squad leader in front of him. "Instruct them that for the low crawl you must keep your body pressed flat against the ground. Keep your arms straight and move as fast as possible by coordinating your arms and knees." He then pointed to the net obstacle course ahead and asked, "Now are you ready to conquer this obstacle course? Using this low crawl technique, are you ready?" The Squad 1 members shouted excitedly, "Ready, coach," Nielsen muttered to himself. "At least this bunch still has some spirit, unlike those idiots in Squad 4. With a stern face, he barked the order, "Group 1, start clearing the obstacle course for me. Move out." Squad 1 immediately hit the deck and crawled rapidly through the nets. Nielsen closed his eyes, thinking suspiciously, "It's only the second week and they're already starting to crawl. Usually that doesn't happen until the fourth week. What on earth is the squad leader planning?" He looked up at them, lamenting, crawling on terrain like that. Isn't just exhausting, it's painful. They're bound to struggle and trip over themselves. Suddenly, Nielsen's eyes widened in shock as he looked at the scene before him. Watching the group nearly reach the finish line, he stammered, "What the hell is wrong with these guys? They're clearing the obstacles at what kind of insane speed?" Nielsen's face darkened in confusion. "What is going on? This is clearly their first time practicing the low crawl." A shadow appeared from behind to report. "Coach," the person asked hesitantly, "when is Group 2 allowed to go?" Nielsen jumped, pointed toward the course, and ordered, "Group 2, move out." Squad 1 cheered as they dove for the wire nets. Nielsen looked back and forth between the two groups, muttering, "What the hell is up with these guys? They look like a bunch of bloodthirsty maniacs." Demian held his head and smiled. "I bet the coach didn't expect us to be this smooth on our first try. This has got to be a first in his teaching career." Ty, looking excited, crawled out. "Demian, that was freaking awesome!" Another guy shouted, "I had to fake being in pain." I was exhausted too. The guy rolled up his sleeves. The terrain was a bit rough, but this trick was a lifesaver. Dieter chimed in, excitedly praising them. "Cutting up those socks to make elbow and knee pads. Demian, you really are a genius." Right then, Nielsen's voice boomed, announcing that Squad 1's low-crawl training was complete. "Training finished. Dismissed back to the barracks." Kai looked over at Demian and asked, "Hey, where did you learn that trick?" Demian didn't even turn his head. "From my late father. But it comes with a warning." Kai asked, "What is it?" Demian smiled faintly and replied, "You absolutely must not get caught by the coach." Demian remembered this coach's furious expression. "You little brats! You've got a lot of nerve pulling tricks right in front of me. Everyone down low, crawl 100 laps around the training field right now. Move!" Kai laughed, slapping Demian on the head. "You're a genius, but he literally just finished talking about it." Demian turned back thinking, this guy, why does he always hit so hard? Is he holding a grudge or something? He looked up at the nearby weapons, deep in thought. Well, all that's left now is the shield and spear training. Finally, I get to learn the kingdom's greatest spear technique. Demian recalled that image contemplative. The kingdom's greatest spear technique. Some fools look down on it compared to the fancy styles of the noble families. But if you master it to the highest level, it's a supreme technique that bows to no other. He remembered his past life. The problem is most people just learn the basics and give up. In my past life, this spear technique was my only turning point. Demian reminisced about that person. I practiced it until I was half dead to finally achieve something, and I only truly broke through after meeting my master. His lips curled into a faint smile. I wonder if the old man is still as eccentric as he used to be. I'm sure I'll run into him again eventually. Opposite them, the group from Squad 4 was making a scene. I'm so tired. We have to crawl on this razor-sharp gravel. Are they crazy? Kai looked up and said, Looks like Squad 4 just finished their practice, too. But those guys... Mason, face full of rage, roared, Can you all just shut your mouths? Stop your whining, will you? Demian and Kai were startled. The Squad 4 members around them immediately retorted, The hell, what did you just bark at us? Hey, you think you're special just because you're the squad leader? Acting like you're the boss of everyone? Acting like you're some big-shot veteran. Dieter laughed. It's getting tense over there. Looks like they're about to fight. Logan chimed in, Yeah. If we didn't have these pads, we'd probably be screaming at each other just like that, right? He put an arm around Demian, laughing. Lucky us. Demian's pads were a total lifesaver. Mason, fuming, looked up at those dogs. How can they still have the mood to sit there laughing their heads off? It's so annoying. I should just go ask them clearly, how are they still forced to practice drills just like me? Looking at their smug faces, they're still perfectly fine, like nothing even happened. Mason's face was filled with fury as he shouted, I bet those guys are pulling some kind of trick again. If it wasn't for that bunch, I wouldn't be stuck doing these penalty drills. He clenched his fist tightly, cursing those bastards under his breath, resolving himself as the inter-squad tournament was only a few days away. When that time comes, I'm going to crush every single one of you. Mason glared with a vicious look, determined to snatch the championship title while Demian faced him with a calm expression as time flew by. Everything passed by incredibly fast, and finally the day of the inter-squad tournament arrived. The instructor looked at the crowd below and asked, Are all 4 squads gathered and present? The group shouted in unison, Yes, Commander! The instructor's voice continued, I will call out the squads according to the tournament bracket. Everyone get ready. Kai turned his head to look and shouted, Demian! You looked back confused. What is it? He furrowed his brows, glancing at Demian, wondering, You look different today somehow. Or maybe I'm just imagining things. Kai's voice continued. There's definitely something different. But I can't quite put my finger on it. Did you just have a growth spurt? You're at that age where you're still growing, right? Logan from behind laughed excitedly. Kai, oh Kai, Demian was already tall to begin with. The person next to him chimed in. That's right, it's just because you're abnormally huge yourself. Stop teasing him. Demian glanced in that direction. He thought angrily, this guy, does he have a gut instinct or something? Images from last night flashed in his mind. Actually, last night I broke through to the second stage of the mana cultivation method. Thanks to that, the amount of mana stored in my body has increased significantly. Demian thought about the purple light that had enveloped him, reflecting ever since I entered this training camp. Persisting with mana training every day has finally paid off. Right after that, he spoke up, making Kai look at him suspiciously, but Demian said with a serious face, In this upcoming squad tournament, I want our squad to win with total overwhelming dominance. In his mind, he thought about the opportunity. The top 5 most outstanding soldiers of the tournament would receive the prize of choosing any equipment they liked from the armory. Demian lowered his head deep in thought. Usually people would choose a weapon or armor enchanted with one-time defensive magic, but those things are at best only C rank. He clenched his fist, thinking about the ring that radiated that light. That isn't my goal. In his past life, he had heard a subordinate at training camp number 3 tell a story. Demian stared at it deep in thought about a ring that possessed an extremely powerful special ability. It's an item with a continuous activation effect, so technically it must be A rank or higher. He gently clenched his fist again, contemplating, to get my hands on it. I have to win this tournament and take first place. If Afel also knows how to use mana and gets to choose first, he might just snatch it right out from under me. Then he looked up and asked, Do you think we can pull it off? Kai chuckled and affirmed, Of course we can. Then he clapped his hands together loudly. Kai looked at the group below and asked, Did you hear that, brothers? The squad leader says we're going to dominate this tournament. You all heard that loud and clear, right? They were full of fighting spirit and shouted excitedly, That's right, first place is definitely ours. Sky turned his head back and said, Looks like everyone is on the same page. Demian closed his eyes and said with a smile, Great. Just then the instructor's voice rang out, I will now announce the tournament schedule. The first match of the tournament squad 1 step forward. Demian took the lead, walking ahead and saying, Let's march straight to the peak of glory, brothers. Right after the squads walked up to report, the instructor loudly announced every detail. The squad tournament will be divided into 2 sides, one side attacking, one side defending. After 1 round, you switch sides. We will play a total of 2 practice rounds. The expressions of the new recruits all became serious as every word from the other side echoed. In their ears, if the attacking side doesn't capture the flag within the allotted time, they lose automatically. Squad 2, and of course Demian and the recruits of Squad 1 had no objections. Following the instructor's next command, prepare to attack first. After hearing the instructions, he turned directly to face his subordinates and emphasized every word, just do exactly what we did during practice. They shouted in unison, Understood, getting the desired answer. Demian scanned his eyes toward the strongest recruit in the team. Kai, you haven't forgotten the plan, right? Listen to my signal. Just ram straight into those guys in front with everything you've got. I've got your back, don't worry about a thing. As for brute force, I'm confident in that. And once both sides finished setting up their formations, the instructor immediately shouted his declaration at the top of his lungs. The match begins. Being the main attackers. Platoon 2 naturally lunged forward in a triangular formation at full speed. Crush them. The guys tightened their grip on their wooden shields to withstand the incoming pressure, while not forgetting to call out, Hold your ground, team, don't let the formation break. Platoon 2 found themselves running into trouble with their assault, unable to do anything. How the hell can you trust these guys? There isn't a single opening. They look just like a solid fortress wall. Watching from the high stand, the instructor couldn't help but blurt out his assessment. So Platoon 2 is attacking first, but Platoon 1's formation looks a bit strange. Right, setting up a formation that dense? Soon. Just means they're sitting ducks. What are they even doing? But unexpectedly, the very next moment, a strange anomaly occurred as a rough, guttural roar echoed through the space. It immediately caught Nolan's attention. Push forward now. As it turns out, the source of that sound was none other than Kai overwhelming his opponents with pure excitement. Everyone in Platoon 2 panicked. Our team is being pushed back. Alex, acting as the flag bearer, gritted his teeth and barked out commands that were almost nonsensical. To the members under his command who were being pressed by the enemy, to the point they couldn't even lift their heads. "Hold the line!" I said. "Hold the line, damn it!" His thin brows furrowed tightly with every roar. "Those bastards, we're the ones on the attack. Shut your mouths and just defend." But the moment after that, Demian, standing in a position to survey the entire situation, just shouted one word: Kai. No long-winded instructions needed, just that. It was enough to trigger his berserker mode. This time, I'm going all out. Faced with that terrifying aura from the opponent, the morale of Platoon 2 plummeted to rock bottom. What the hell is that? What kind of monster is that guy? He's not even using his shield. He's ramming straight in with his shoulder, and because of that reckless charge, it forced Demian's teammates to speed up and run toward the leader. Kai immediately urged them on, "Stick close to me." The very next moment, even though Platoon 1 was technically on defense, they became the aggressors as Kai decisively charged into the enemy formation and just kept pushing. Facing this terrifying scene, Alex himself turned pale, teeth clenched. How are they coordinating so perfectly? Clearly they've trained for the same amount of time as us. With keen eyes, Demian quickly spotted the exact moment they grew arrogant. The opening is their Platoon 1 all-out attack. Without a pause, a new wave of assault ensued. It was so brutal that white dust kicked up in the vast space. Witnessing everything unfolding in such an unbelievable way, Nolan couldn't help but stutter as he turned to ask Brian. "You're in charge of that group. What on earth is this? Captain of the first platoon, did you make them train overtime or something?" After hesitating for a long while, he finally responded, "I'm surprised too." Deep down, a sense of fear rose up along with sweat rolling down his cheek. I never expected those who just learned the basics to perform this excellently. At this level, they're no different from elite specially trained soldiers. Glancing toward the quiet figure behind the energetic troops, he knew the reason they were able to do this. Of course, it was all thanks to that kid. Right now, in Brian's eyes, Demian was showing his own decisiveness. At the right moment, he gave the order, "Split wide to the sides to create space. In this match, we have to shatter Platoon 2's formation completely." Memories of the moment he caught them training flashed through his mind. Platoon 1 volunteered to stay back after class every single day, and Demian was there to patch up their weaknesses. No wonder they're reaping the rewards now, meanwhile. Each member under his command was showing steadfastness, doing exactly what he taught them. Raise your shields. Don't let them drop below your shoulders. Just do exactly what Demian said. Seeing the results unfold so positively, Brian couldn't control his surging excitement. At first, I was worried that a tiny kid acting as platoon captain wouldn't work out, but he has proven it with his own practical ability. The moment he saw Alex in his line of sight, Demian decisively shouted, "Kai now!" The telepathic connection was so intense that just those few words were enough for him to understand his intent. "Where's the flag again?" Flashing a bright toothpaste commercial smile, Alex was so scared he jumped when he spotted him. "Found you." Now panic surged through Alex, making him so flustered that sweat drenched his body. "Stop him. Forget the attack. Just focus on stopping him." In contrast to the morale that was practically non-existent in Platoon 2, Platoon 1 still possessed an intimidating aura. "Not a chance. Come on, team, group up." Amidst the thick, billowing smoke, Kai casually cracked a smirk, amused by these idiots. The opponents were all stunned. How could that guy who was built like an ox just be standing there? The excitement on his face never wavered for a second. "Listen up, you guys. You've fallen right into our trap." Successfully causing quite a panic among the leaders, they were still reeling from his announcement when a figure suddenly lunged off the ground. Moving like a gust of wind with the quick footwork of a 13-year-old, the person was none other than Demian, agile and ready. Well done. Demian launched his small frame into midair, his sharp eyes locked onto one target, Alex. Before Alex could even react, the end of the staff in Demian's hands shoved straight into his chest. The force was so violent it knocked him onto the gritty ground. The moment he let out a howl of pain, the coach blew the whistle. "Time's up." Since the attacking team Squad 2 failed to capture the flag, Demian, literally standing over his opponent, held the red flag high and proudly declared, "We won!" Naturally, after that grueling match, the blue-haired coach didn't forget to call it "take a break," then both teams switched sides. The guys behind couldn't help but gush, "That was insane. At this rate, Squad 1 is going to sweep the whole tournament." but one person retorted firmly, "Not necessarily. It's too early to say." His finger encased in the red glove of his uniform pointed straight ahead. "Look over there. See that?" Meanwhile, the other two teams were locked in a fierce battle. Based on his assessment, weren't they going to be a worthy rival for Squad 1 fueled by growing rage? Like a volcanic eruption, a rookie stomped the ground maniacally. "Damn it, this is bullshit. Seriously, to hell with this." As it turned out, it was the squad leader observing the situation spiraling out of his control. "Squad 3, our first opponents. I was just thinking. This match was supposed to be a warm-up before we went and crushed those Squad 1 punks. With Hayden standing there in the defensive line with a shield, it was clearly Mason who was drowning in frustrated thoughts. What the hell, these guys? They're just standing there, not moving an inch. Man, if our vanguard has already failed this miserably, if we lose this match too, then..." He couldn't hold it back any longer. The anger building in his gut finally exploded as he shouted gibberish. "What the hell are you guys doing? Did you forget the whole plan? Just do exactly what I told you." Sure enough, the very next second, he invited a wave of challenging backlash from his subordinates. "If it's so easy, why don't you come down and do it yourself? What kind of squad leader are you? All you do is hide in the back and bark orders." Deep inside, Mason was going insane. Damn it. This coordination is garbage, and on top of that, nobody has any motivation at all. Then at that exact moment, over at Squad 3, Jorah, the leader, calmly raised the issue with the youth next to him. "Afel, those guys over there look exhausted. Should I charge in and punch a hole through their formation?" The boy shook his head decisively. "No need." The next moment, he calmly laid out the plan, his blue eyes radiating clear confidence. "Just hold your position and target their shield bearers, that's all. If we just drag this out, they'll fall apart on their own." Despite the instruction coming from someone younger, Jorah just nodded in agreement without a hint of opposition. "Okay, let's do that." His mind, however, kept racing. Afel. I never expected a 14-year-old kid to grasp the situation and the enemy's weaknesses this quickly. With his own sharp eyes, Jorah quickly questioned the boy's background. "We've only known each other for 2 weeks, but I'm honestly really curious about his family history. This kid is obviously a commoner. That can't be." But he didn't let that distract him from the battle for long. He firmly issued the necessary commands. "Everyone put all the pressure on their shield bearers, maintain the formation, and hold your ground." And so another terrifying clash unfolded. With neither side yielding, Hayden, the leader, shouted defiantly, his brows knit tightly. "You cowards! If you've got guts, come at me and fight! Stop playing these pathetic stall games!" But just by being loud, he gave Jorah a clear assessment of the situation. The strength and morale of Squad 4 had hit rock bottom. The best-case scenario was them losing patience and charging in on their own. Contrary to what he anticipated, Hayden, who was shouting just a second ago, was already exhausted to the point of foaming at the mouth. "I can't take it anymore." No matter what the signal had come, Jorah firmly shouted the command to his members. "Squad 3, this is our chance." The whole group braced themselves, charging in to shatter Squad 4's defense with pure force and a thunderous roar, ignoring how drained they were. Hayden's group still tried to use their bodies as anchors to hold their ground. Don't fall. If the shield bearers go down, it's over. Unfortunately, things wouldn't be that easy to handle. As Jorah turned and called his name, Afel was just waiting for that. The moment the words left his mouth, Afel charged toward the stacked shields, leaping onto them without hesitation. It was clearly a launch pad designed specifically for him, for this situation. And sure enough, in the very next moment, Afel instantly launched himself into the air just like Demian did a few minutes ago. Possessing a terrifying surge of magical power, he didn't waste a single bit of it. He channeled it all into the staff in his hand. With his own raw strength alone, he easily sent Squad 4 crashing down in a shocking display. Watching this scene from a spot considered safe, Mason was so terrified his eyebrows knit together. What the hell are you idiots doing? His mind couldn't even forget the bet he made with that damn Demian, fighting like this. There's no way they'll ever beat Squad 1. And at the very next moment, from the corner of his eye, he caught the sight of him looking totally relaxed. Watching this unimpressive display from a distance, the boy let out a sigh. It's over. And sure enough, the coach's voice rang out right after, "The practice match has concluded. Squad 3 wins." Looking at the person being cheered on under the clear blue sky, Demian immediately came to a conclusion. Kai, that awful guy, he's definitely no joke. He's going to be a tough opponent. Turning his back and walking away decisively, his mind began to shift. In the end, the real fight would be against Squad 3. With a surge of magic, he had personally leveled up. The corner of his lips curled into an excited arc. This is going to be interesting. See you in the finals, Affle? After a short break, the squads having just gone through a grueling battle, the coach stood up and announced, "Break time is over. All squads assemble at the training ground immediately." As they moved forward, Kai didn't forget to confirm things with the person next to him, Demian. "Hey, we're crushing Squad 4 in this match, right?" He just calmly and lazily responded, "Exactly. This is their last chance, too. They're going to struggle to earn a single point of honor for sure, but in the meantime..." He crossed his arms over his chest as a refreshing breeze blew by, grinning from ear to ear. "Now this is gonna be fun. I'm gonna smack the teeth out of that guy who dared to call you a brat." Demian calmly rejected it. "That guy I already called dibs on him. Just clear the path for me, that's all." Facing his teammates, he had no hesitation in listing the opponent's weaknesses. All right, the enemy is tired and their coordination is absolute garbage. Radiating an evil aura so intense that even the clear blue sky seemed to yield, Demian emphasized every word. "But I don't intend to go easy on them. We even need to strike faster and hit harder. We have to crush them into the ground this match." As soon as the last word left his lips, Kai and the others were overflowing with excitement, bursting into an enthusiastic laugh. "I've been waiting for this moment. Gotta make them pay for running their mouths." Once everyone finished cheering, he as the team leader immediately turned serious and gave his orders. "End it fast and clean, everyone stay focused." No one had any objections. The Logan group still wore their grins as they replied, "Agreed," loud and clear. And then in the following moment, the entire Squad 1 had taken their positions, everyone bursting with spirit and grim determination on their faces. In contrast to them was the apprehensive bunch from Squad 4. Having just lost to Team 3 quite miserably, which only highlighted the gap between the two forces, Demian, as the one in charge, maintained a look of total confidence, while that guy Mason was as annoyed as if he owed him a few tens of silver coins. Under the coach's command, the match began. With a terrifying aura, Squad 1 took the initiative to attack with a thunderous roar. "Let's go, guys!" It wasn't long before both sides closed the distance, with his group holding their formation as they charged. Unlike when he just observed Squad 2 from behind, Demian could now directly witness how Squad 4 operated and plan accordingly. The formation of this Squad 4 looks a lot looser than I thought. At this level, if we just ram straight into them, their formation will shatter. And then his mouth curled up at a 45-degree angle, overflowing with confidence the moment he got into position. "But I have to do it thoroughly and perfectly. I'm going to crush them to pieces, so that from now on, nobody dares to open their mouth again." Using perfect coordination thanks to his release of power, Demian shoved the biggest guy among them, Kai, just by combining the strength of two people. A violent collision occurred between the two distinct sides, and Squad 4 was clearly shaken by the brutal wind that Demian himself had just created. What is this? What kind of monstrous strength is this? Being the one who always stood in the safest spot, Mason didn't understand a thing other than screaming out of rising panic, "What the hell are you guys doing? Tighten your glutes and hold the defensive line, you useless idiots." Sweat was pouring off him like a late autumn downpour. He barked at the shield squad to protect the flag and intercept their direct assault immediately. As for the spear squad, it was a shame that while he was busy flapping his gums, both Kai and Demian had repeated the same move they used against the second squad, leaving Mason with nothing to do. He jumped in shock at the sight of him floating in the vast space. "I told you I'd remember your face, didn't I?" "It's definitely you." Gritting his teeth tightly, a wave of danger hit him so hard that Mason, beyond just standing there, had no idea how else to react. There wasn't even a hint of surprise. His right arm was instantly crippled by the boy. By the time Demian landed lightly on the ground, Mason had already collapsed, clutching his painful shoulder, though his rage overcame his reason. It even made him forget the pain as he hissed through gritted teeth full of hatred, "You son of a b! You should know when to hold back a little." Not for nothing was he someone who carried such deep-seated hatred. He didn't hesitate to pick up the wooden staff he'd dropped, sneering, "Do you take me for a scarecrow?" And in that next moment, Mason charged in as if the previous kick meant nothing. "In a fair duel, someone like you wouldn't even be worth the rust on a nail," he said, exhaling with boredom. To someone tempered by countless battles like Demian, the guy's attack was pathetic. He had already predicted it. He didn't even want to waste more time decisively grabbing the head of his opponent's staff. "Is this really all you've got?" Clearly, Mason didn't have the strength to hold on to that last piece of wood. He casually tossed his shield aside and began a beautiful display of staff fighting techniques. Already lost your weapon just like that. The very next moment, without a second thought, he delivered another decisive strike right onto the injury he had kicked earlier. He stepped on his enemy with a cool, murderous intensity. Blood dripped from Demian as he spat out every word. Dropping your weapon on the battlefield is no different than begging on your knees to be killed, you idiot. He didn't just stop at simple intimidation. He clenched his fist, gathering mana etched today into your memory, because this is some useful advice for your future survival. Giving him no chance to counterattack, a heavy punch landed directly on Mason's face. Understand? Demian finished, witnessing this terrifying scene. The instructor finally couldn't just stand by, rushing over. Captain of the 4th Squad, are you okay? Demian just let out another weary sigh, the nth time that day. It was too easy, I'm bored of even saying it, he muttered. Meanwhile, the instructor experienced firsthand what a sharp, intense gaze from the squad leader felt like. He hesitated before speaking, realizing the 4th Squad had no strength left to continue the match, while Demian's hand was already picking up the wooden staff as he continued. So the victory in this match was undisputed. He raised the blue flag high as the instructor of the 1st Platoon announced it, despite having just gone through a somewhat exhausting fight. Kai was still full of energy, laughing heartily. That felt great. The other rookies were just as thrilled. As expected of Demian, he's truly the best. They watched as Mason had to be carried away on a stretcher by 2 others. The members of the 4th Squad were genuinely terrified of the 1st Squad's leader. Didn't they say he was only 13? How could his level be so overpowered? Watching from the high platform, someone couldn't help but exclaim that he was truly a born genius. Hwasun nodded in agreement as he voiced his assessment. He might even be better than us instructors. Dudot, standing beside him, laughed and nodded, agreeing with what he said. I swear I can't even argue with that. Unexpectedly, a larger figure appeared beside them and asked, "What are you all chatting about so enthusiastically?" It was a moment that successfully drew everyone's attention and confusion. Standing before them was none other than Leonhart Belcan, the chief instructor of the 3rd Division of the Vatic Kingdom. Not realizing who had arrived, no one dared to be slow, standing straight and saluting, "Glory to the kingdom." Not bothering to pay them any mind, Leonhart went straight to the point, eyes fixed on the target. "Is that the kid you told me about, Brian?" Looking toward Demian, who was being lifted up by the 1st Squad in celebration of his victory. He nodded, confirming his superior's question. "Yes, that's him, sir." A smirk curled on Leonhart's lips as he spoke slowly, word by word. "Looks like an interesting factor has just appeared." And then time passed as the rookies headed home, only for a young man to suddenly burst through the door of the 1st Squad's barracks and yell, "Whoa, that's beautiful!" as he chatted with the other teammates. Demian quickly turned to ask Shevo what all the commotion was about, and Shevo hurriedly replied that it seemed like some big shot had just visited the training camp. Remembering the scene he had witnessed, a clearly startled Shevo mentioned that the newcomer was an extremely famous instructor. "He's from the 3rd Division. That old guy. He's a total legend in the training world." Seeing his own instructors looking completely dumbfounded at the mention of the special guest, Demian immediately stood up and asked the obvious question. "An instructor from the 3rd Division? What's his name?" Rubbing his head, Shevo tried to recall. "I just heard it a second ago, but it slipped my mind. The name was..." Demian was instantly struck by a wave of shock upon hearing the next name mentioned. "Leonhart, I think." And in that very moment, Demian corrected the name swirling in his mind, Leonhart. Sure enough, Shevo nodded. "Yeah, that's the one." Before Shevo could finish, Demian dashed past him, leaving him startled and suspicious. "Demian, where are you going?" The squad leader sprinted down the hallway with a stern, urgent expression, leaving Shevo deeply confused. What the hell is wrong with him? But meanwhile, Demian paid no mind to his surroundings, focusing solely on the vital thought in his mind. I have to see for myself. If it really was him. But little did Demian know, as he went to find out, Leonhart was already closing the distance from the opposite direction. His presence, of course, would attract that man's attention. "Isn't that the recruit Demian from earlier?" Brian, seeing this, looked joyful and exclaimed, "Demian, I was just looking for you!" Unexpectedly, Demian closed the gap between them, stood tall, and gave the most precise formal salute. "Glory to the kingdom." Facing this greeting, Leonhart calmly confirmed, "You're Demian, right?" Of course, being his own name, Demian didn't hesitate to acknowledge it. "Yes, that's me." The atmosphere suddenly turned quiet as Demian sank into his thoughts. The 3rd Division is actually connected to training camp number 3, But that place is so far away, I thought it would take ages to meet him. Regardless, the happiness Demian felt at meeting the person closest to him in his past life was immeasurable. It's been a long time. The man with the greatest influence on his life, his master. Standing in the long hallway, Leonhardt confirmed the information after Demian's respectful salute. So you're Demian. Outwardly, he remained composed, but inwardly, he was intrigued. That stubborn old diamond keeps praising this kid, so I had to come and see for myself. Sensing the mana flowing through the boy's body, he silently praised him. He's practicing a top-tier mana circulation method, isn't he? Stroking his chin in thought. And looking the young man up and down, Leonhardt suddenly spoke up. I was watching earlier. Your swordsmanship is quite something. Have you set your sights on any unit after graduation? Hearing the question, Demian fell into deep thought for a moment. The unit he wanted. His lips moved as if organizing his words. I don't need to. Without hesitating too long, he gave his declaration with a face full of excitement. I intend to join the Neocalis unit. The moment that crisp answer echoed in the quiet air, it left Leonhardt stunned with surprise. Are you serious? Because compared to other organizations, Neocalis was not a place to be taken lightly. As a unit within the 3rd Division, their mission was to wipe out the monsters spilling out of the Johnson Forest. It was the most dangerous and harsh place. People died there every year. Because he understood this perfectly. Leonhardt felt both disbelief and curiosity at Demian's choice. Why on earth would you throw yourself into a place like that? Wouldn't it be better to live comfortably as a royal administrative official? Demian looked him straight in the eyes and replied with unwavering determination, because only there can I become stronger. With that firm answer, Leonhardt couldn't help but grin with interest. If you want, I can write a letter of recommendation to get you into the knight ranks. The words shocked Brian, who hurried to interject. Instructor, that place is reserved only for the nobility, standing before a door that countless people would trade everything to reach. Demian refused. I am very grateful for your offer, but I have already decided. Because in his heart, his goal was set. There is someone there I must meet. I traveled all the way to this 3rd Division just to find that man. Seeing the conviction in every word and choice, Leonhardt didn't push any further. Since it's your decision, I won't stop you. Go get some rest. Before leaving, Brian still couldn't help but look back at Demian and complain, this guy, do you even realize you just missed a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? Usually the knights only accept nobles, but with a recommendation letter from the coach, it's a different story. He immediately turned to Leon with a desperate look, trying to beg for a chance for the 13-year-old boy. Coach, I think Demian is still too young, so he doesn't quite realize what he just walked away from. Let me go talk to him and try to change his mind. But instead of agreeing, the instructor unexpectedly spoke up. Do you really think that kid chose the wrong path? And while he was still struggling to come up with an answer, the instructor recalled the look on Demian's face when he turned down the offer. You must not have seen the look in his eyes back there. Speaking of which, he couldn't help but chuckle with genuine interest. It's rare to find a teenager like that. Where did he even come from? Only 13, yet he's got real backbone. No joke. With that thought and a look of satisfaction still on his face, he advised, don't push him anymore, just let him be. As long as he's in the 3rd Division, we're bound to run into each other again eventually. A day of rest passed, and the next morning was the match between the 1st squad and the 3rd squad. Demian glanced over at the opposing group and reminded his team, you saw them yesterday. The 3rd squad isn't a pushover. He paused for a beat to let everyone focus before continuing with a firm tone, but I can guarantee you one thing. At this point, there isn't a single squad in this training camp that can give us a hard time anymore. That spirited declaration immediately boosted the team's morale. Kai chimed in enthusiastically. We're actually really strong, aren't we? After those 2 crushing victories last time. It only fueled the squad's fire even more. Demian smirked with determination. Let's crush them. Do what we always do. As soon as he finished, the coach's booming voice echoed across the open area. The 3rd squad attacks first. The match begins on my signal. Demian immediately raised his hand, signaling everyone group up. But in just a few short seconds, the other team formed a tight defensive formation, leaving Jorah momentarily surprised. That formation. Isn't that the same one they used against the 4th squad yesterday? Afel watched from the sidelines and remarked, I'll admit it looks solid. Watching the human wall that the 1st squad had just built, he narrowed his eyes, calculating. Then stressing every word he said, Awful, you've got a crucial role in this match. You know what to do. Right, no need for any more explanation. He just nodded, yes. Under his command, the members of the third squad simultaneously shifted, linking together in sturdy layers. Let's go. As the order was given, both sides immediately clashed in a brutal collision. Jorah's brows furrowed tight. He immediately adjusted his tactics. Everyone, charge. Watching the familiar maneuver, Jorah just frowned, realizing it was the same old trick from yesterday. In that tense moment, he suddenly shouted crisply, "Afel now!" As the signal was given, those on the front line immediately split to both sides, to leave a wide-open corridor right in the middle of their formation. This unexpected change made Demian freeze, his eyes locked on the gap that had just appeared. They're breaking their own formation. What are they planning? Unlike the heavy projectile attack from yesterday, this time, Offal immediately lunged forward, dashing through the open path. In just a few breaths, he was on top of his target, swinging his staff straight at one of the opposing members. The sequence happened so fast that Demian, who thought he had the situation under control, had to hesitate for a second. Realizing the plan had worked, Jorah immediately seized the opportunity. Offal's punch landed. Exploit that gap now. At that very moment, Kai, who possessed a brawny physique, stepped up with his two shields. He crouched into a defensive stance. "You think I'll let you do as you please?" The charge, which had been full of momentum, was forced to a halt by just one man, and it sent them into a total panic. What the hell? What kind of monster strength is this? Standing behind the lines, Demian secretly breathed a sigh of relief at the sudden turn of events. Thank God Kai managed to block that dangerous attack. Remembering the scene, he couldn't help but marvel inwardly. That kid Offal is seriously top tier. He sent the guy holding the shield flying with one hit. And meanwhile, on the other side of the field, he was also watching Kai and let out a sigh. What kind of monster is that? He clearly looks like a northerner. So why? Is he lurking around this training camp number 3 for no clue? He quickly brushed the thought aside because there was a much more pressing issue at hand. Whatever the reason, this is starting to get annoying. Now that musclehead has me locked down. Suddenly, the memory of his pre-match conversation with Demian flashed through his mind. Kai, your only job is to stick to that guy Offel like glue. As long as you can hold him back, no one else will be able to break through our formation. Hearing that name, he couldn't help but feel confused. Who exactly is Offel? Demian had just smiled cryptically. You'll know the second you see him. Back to the ongoing match, Kai stood tall on the front line like a fortress, smirking arrogantly. Let's see what you punks are actually made of. Seeing the obstacle ahead still showing no sign of wavering, Offal slowly stepped forward and called out, Hey Offal, do you think you can pierce through that? Even knowing this wouldn't be an easy opponent, he had no intention of backing down. It has to be done no matter what. He could feel the pressure radiating from his opponent. Offal immediately went through his plans in his head to find a way to break through. Just trying to brute force this guy isn't going to work. With that, he slowly closed his eyes and poured all his strength into the spear in his hands. There was only one way left. In the next moment, he let out a sudden shout and lunged forward. With his target set on Kai, he brought the weapon down with terrifying force, but Kai managed to raise his shield just in time. His teammates standing behind him erupted into cheers. He blocked it as expected of our Kai, but they didn't realize that the corner of Offal's mouth was curling into a knowing smirk. Fine, you want to block? Let's see about that. The spear in his hands pushed harder, surging with mana-infused power. If that's the game, I'll just keep pounding until you shatter. Gritting his teeth, Kai braced himself for each blow, which landed as heavy as a sledgehammer. Kai couldn't believe it. Damn it! How is a kid the same age as Demian this insanely strong? No sooner had that thought crossed his mind than the shield in his hands couldn't take any more and cracked open. Seriously. Damn it. Pulling his spear back, Offal poured all his remaining strength into one final strike. Let's end this here. With nothing left to defend himself with, Kai could only raise his hands to brace for the incoming attack. But at the very moment of truth, just as they were inches apart, a figure suddenly darted in from the side. Demian appeared just in time, using his mana-coated shield to intercept Offel's strike. When he realized who was standing in his way, he couldn't help but be surprised and called out the other's name. Just as it seemed a new clash was about to explode, the sound of the whistle suddenly echoed through the air. The sound made everyone freeze and turn their attention to the source. Standing in the middle of the field, the coach quickly spoke up. Final results. Time's up, since the attacking team. 3 failed to capture the flag within the time limit. Team 3 loses. hearing that verdict. Offal immediately clenched his fists until they were stiff. With a look of frustration, he thought, that giant actually managed to block every single one of my attacks. Damn it! And I thought I could finish this off quickly. On the other side, Demian looked over at his friend who was still breathing heavily after that last defensive effort. He asked with concern, Kai, are you all right? He replied slowly, putting on a brave face. Of course I'm fine. Demian paused for a moment before making a decision. For the second half, you sit out and rest. This took him by surprise. Don't be ridiculous. I didn't even break a bone. I'm fine. However, in order to protect his friend, Demian stood his ground and reminded him of the stakes. We still have 2 whole weeks of training ahead of us. If you aggravate an injury here, you can kiss your graduation goodbye. Demian didn't stop there. He quickly shifted to a different plan. Instead, you focus on guarding the flag in the center of the field. You're the only one I trust with that. If we lose the flag, it's all on you, all right? Kai was silent for a moment, then gave a light laugh, realizing how much Demian really cared about him. You're trying to save face for me while looking out for me, aren't you, Demian? Besides, in this round, we're the attacking side. Why are you suddenly talking about guarding the flag? Not wanting to drag out the back and forth, he firmly grabbed what was handed to him and said in a tone of assurance, Don't worry, I won't let anyone touch it. You just get out there and crush them. A few short moments passed and the coach's whistle rang out once more. Switch sides, Team 1, prepare to attack. Before the formation fully settled, Demian swept his gaze across each of his teammates' faces. He spoke up, Listen, I know everyone's exhausted, but this is the final match of the tournament. Let's give it our all. We're attacking this round, and I have no intention of dragging this out. His eyes slowly narrowed, determination showing in every feature. 5 minutes. Demian turned to face the opposing formation head-on with a deadly serious expression. Of course, he wasn't the only one feeling determined, as Team 3 was also brimming with fighting spirit. And so, his voice echoed once more across the vast space with a firm tone. We are going to snatch their flag and seal our victory. 5 minutes before the official match even started, Squad 1 and Squad 3 were already facing off, spirits high as they locked eyes on the enemy. Demian silently tightened his resolve. The final match of the tournament had finally arrived. Every battle he'd fought, every time he'd led his teammates through hardship, flashed through his mind. He had given his absolute all as a squad leader. And now it was time to make those coaches carve his name into their memories, he thought to himself. A corner of his mouth slowly curled up in excitement. Demian kept his eyes fixed ahead, his fighting spirit burning fiercer with every passing second, especially if he could beat Squad 3 in this match. With a fellow in the way, the best rookie title was 100% guaranteed. His figure quickly came into view among the enemy ranks. Looks like he's planning to guard the flag himself. That's a lot of stamina to burn. Telling him to lead the front lines would be too cruel. Even though he felt bad this was decided from the start, either way a direct clash was inevitable. The atmosphere on this field turned tense as a taut wire when the announcement echoed across the arena. Squad 1 attacking Squad 3, defending the final match begins. The moment the signal dropped, Demian immediately looked back at his group and shouted, Floor it! Let's go all out from the start! Focus everyone, and follow me. A roar of agreement went up, filled with spirit, and immediately after the entire Squad 1 moved in their prearranged formation. They lunged toward the enemy's territory, leaving the spectators stunned. What the hell, why are they moving so fast? Running at that breakneck speed? And the formation didn't even shift a millimeter. The more Guerra watched, the more he felt the pressure brought by the enemy, led by that guy Demian. They are definitely not messing around. As soon as the thought crossed his mind, he immediately gave the order, Raise your shields, watch out for their squad leader. But just as the command was passed down, Demian had already bolted from the formation with lightning speed. Useless! Mana surged into the arm holding his spear. In that split second, the distance between the two sides was reduced to the absolute limit. He struck with absolute conviction. With this one hit, I'm going to pierce right through the defense they set up to stop our initial charge. The line shook violently. The vanguard on the opposing side yelled out in panic, The shield's been breached! Faced with Demian's overwhelming power, the key defensive point of Squad 3 collapsed in the blink of an eye. Having achieved his goal, he shouted immediately to signal the teammates behind him. The line is broken. Witnessing the terrifying scene unfold in an instant, Guerra immediately barked orders. Don't let them through! Stop them now! Commands were relayed one after another. With a desperate determination to hold the line, we have to take them down right now. At the moment the encirclement was about to close and Demian's pupils ignited with determination. Just as the attacks all converged on him, he had already zipped out of his original position. Thanks to his incredibly flexible movement, the moment the enemy's weapons slammed into the ground, the target was already gone. He weaved through the gaps in the enemy ranks, forcing several members of Squad 3 to stumble and fall. My ankle. While constantly moving, Demian didn't forget to look back and shout to his team, "Squad 1, reform the formation." Kai and the remaining members immediately picked up the pace. They rushed forward to finish off the panicked rookies. "You've already made it this far, huh?" Seeing that Guerra's face couldn't help but pale, his expression tightening stage by stage. "No way. How can they get past this fast?" A fellow standing to one side quickly reached a conclusion. "No matter what, that guy is the biggest threat." His brows knit together as he assessed the situation. "As long as we lock Demian down, they won't get a finger on the flag." Saying this, he handed the flag to his captain and instructed, "I'll hold him off. You just make sure to keep that flag safe." A wordless call escaped his lips. A fellow looked at the back, currently preparing to step into the front line. In Guerra's heart complex, emotions welled up. "Never did I think there would come a time when I'd have to rely on this kid in a situation like this." Seeing a fellow slowly walking toward him through the dust, Demian realized, the final showdown has finally arrived. That image brought back memories from his past life. The future great general, a fellow Van Chill. While Demian was busy reminiscing, a fellow suddenly leaped into the air. Then he appeared right above his head. Faced with the sudden strike, he remained calm. If I want to see how my skills stack up against a guy like him, then this is the perfect opportunity. As he leaned to dodge the incoming attack, his mind didn't stop for a second. That first strike was just a feint. Realizing his opponent's intent, Demian's lips curled up in excitement. If that's the case... His eyes stayed glued to every shift in a fellow's movement. As the next attack was unleashed, he's quick, but this one is the real deal. The weapon in his hand was instantly raised to meet the downward strike, creating a violent shockwave between the two distinct mana currents. The attack, which had been carefully calculated, was parried, precisely leaving a fellow taken aback. However, he quickly adjusted his rhythm, retracted his stance, and stepped back while Demian's hand tightened around the hilt of his weapon. As the mana continuously surged and flowed within him, Awful go all out. The fighting spirit in his heart swelled higher and higher, blurring the distance between the two of them. In the blink of an eye, I'm going to throw everything I've got at you to take you down. Before the powerful blow could land, Awful managed to raise his weapon in defense just in time. But Demian wasn't about to give up right there. He decisively raised his staff again, and another fierce blow came crashing down. The force passing through his weapon made Awful's expression shift for a moment. The amount of mana was so intense it almost snapped his spear. Continuously parrying the relentless attacks from the front, the more they fought, the more stunned and suspicious Awful felt. Is he actually a commoner? Don't tell me he's the same kind of monster as I am. The questions in his heart grew greater than ever. How could Demian, a complete wildcard, control mana with such incredible mastery? Facing the energy still churning fiercely before him, Awful couldn't help but smile bitterly to himself. He never expected to run into such a brick wall in this pipsqueak training camp, a wall standing so imposing and tall. After a round of clashes, Demian suddenly pulled back and said calmly, "Let's end this, shall we, Awful?" Awful immediately unleashed every bit of force he had stored in his body. It transformed into a shockwave, blasting straight forward. "You definitely can't block this one." The spearhead tore through the air, and in an instant it shattered the weapon guarding his chest. Then it slammed right into Awful without hesitation. The immense pressure sent him flying, rolling several times across the ground before he struggled to stand back up. Awful winced from the pain spreading throughout his body. Seizing the moment when his opponent couldn't stop him, Demian immediately ignored him and sprinted toward the target. But behind him, Awful's could only watch helplessly, unable to do a thing. Damn it! His vision started to blur, but he still tried to reach for the item. As the representative of his squad, in just a split second, Demian successfully grabbed the flag and held it high above his head amidst the cheers from the first squad's instructor. Witnessing the scene, Awful could only grit his teeth and accept the result. Holding the flag, Demian quickly approached the person he had just battled. "You were good." He reached out a hand to pull his opponent up and offered his praise. "Great fight, Awful." Awful nodded and replied, "Congrats to you, but next time I won't lose." Faced with that determined declaration, Demian flashed a bright smile. "In that case, we should just be on the same team next time to be safe." "I don't think I have enough in me to beat you up a second time." Facing that brilliant sun-like smile, Afel felt no resentment at all. As he stood firm again, he lightly punched Demian's chest and retorted, "Stop being so humble, will you?" In Demian's heart at that moment there was a sense of excitement when thinking about the future. He had truly defeated Afel Van Chill. Perhaps this experience might have inadvertently turned him into an even more terrifying monster, who knows? Quickly brushing the thought aside, Demian turned to look at his teammates who were cheering non-stop. But that's a problem for later. For now, he had to enjoy the joy of victory with his crew. And in that moment, at a spot not far from the competition area, the instructor watched it all and calmly concluded, "So it all ends with a victory for the first squad. Must ensure the remaining 2 weeks of training go just as smoothly as this." Hearing this, Leon Hart behind him just smiled and confirmed, "Exactly." From his vantage point, he captured the moment Demian enjoyed the applause of his team. Let the kids taste the sweet flavor of victory. First, standing firm before a table laden with attractive food, he couldn't hide his excitement mixed with hunger and shouted, "Are you kidding me? Is this for real? We get to eat like kings right here in the training camp. This squad prize was worth every penny." Demian watched his teammates devouring the meat and whispered to himself in amazement, "They just pushed themselves to the limit. Look how energetic they are. But it's expected. It's not every day you get to stuff your face with meat like this." He looked around, searching for someone's silhouette. "Master looks like he's gone. A pity, I still wanted to talk to him a bit more." Suddenly, Raymond appeared and asked to join in. "Mind if I sit here with you?" A student immediately stood up and hurriedly offered his seat. "Instructor." "Yes, of course, sir. Please sit down." He took the seat and showed visible curiosity. "Demian, you're still sticking with your decision from yesterday, aren't you?" "You mean the offer from Instructor Leon Hart?" He didn't react with much excitement and simply replied, "Yes, that's right, sir." Zemon heard this and could only laugh helplessly. "Such a shame. It's such a rare opportunity." He glanced over to probe him again. "But do you know about this yet?" Demian was naturally curious. "What is it, sir?" Zemon then recounted an event that had taken place recently. Instructor Leon Hart also extended an invitation to the Knights squad to Offal too. Guess what his answer was? He calmly replied, "Whatever he chooses, I'll respect his decision. Offal's life is his own to decide after all." He couldn't help but chuckle at that answer. "You really are such a tedious kid." Demon watched the other for a few seconds and thought to himself, "I came out here to advise you to reconsider joining the Knights, but it looks like nothing I say will change your mind." That being the case, he stood up and raised his glass, his voice ringing out with goodwill. "Listen up, everyone. You've all worked incredibly hard over the past 2 weeks. I wish you the very best. We're right back to training again tomorrow. Get your heads in the game. I hope you'll all push yourselves to hit your personal goals." Everyone cheered happily, raised their glasses, and shouted in unison, "Glory to the kingdom!" Time flew by in the blink of an eye, and before they knew it, they were in the 3rd and final week of training. The instructor crossed his arms and roared, urging them on. "Thrust harder, faster, move it." Demian scanned the area, the corners of his mouth curling up in satisfaction as he noticed the recruits' attitudes had clearly shifted. And it wasn't just his squad, either. The entire training camp number 3. Things were changing for the better, it seemed. That last squad tournament had been a huge catalyst. The instructor's voice boomed out, "Attention, everyone! 5-minute break." Kai walked over panting and asked cautiously, "Hey, Demian, did you hear the news?" He turned puzzled. "What news?" Kai leaned in, repeating what he'd picked up. "I heard the morale in the 4th platoon has been absolutely pathetic since that tournament. Their dropout rate is skyrocketing right now." Kai laughed gleefully, "Especially their squad leader. As soon as they bombed the tournament, he just bailed." Demian smirked sarcastically. "How humiliating." Suddenly, he turned and dropped a question. "But Kay, you know what's most important right now, don't you?" "Right." Demian faced everyone seriously and reminded them, "Sure, we got a ton of group points from winning that squad tournament, but if you want a decent position later on, you need to worry about your individual scores. Everyone here dreams of stepping foot into the Royal Palace, right? It's the cushiest job any commoner recruit could drool over. Royal Palace Administrative Soldier. But out of the 160 people here, only 30 get to apply to the palace. Even then, the internal competition is so cutthroat that only 1/3 of the applicants actually make the cut." Kai was still laughing at first, but his expression grew tense. "Sounds pretty stressful, huh?" Demian glanced back and spilled the truth. "After all, everyone who joins the military here is here for that exact goal. Kai sensed something was off and grabbed his shoulder, questioning, "Wait, don't tell me you're aiming for that royal administrative seat too?" He sighed wearily and explained, "I have no intention of going to the palace." But Kai wouldn't listen, badgering him, "Why not? Are you telling me you don't want to be a royal administrative soldier?" Demian calmed himself to point out the harsh reality of fame and fortune. "Do you have any idea how it is? If you get in, you'll be stuck in that palace all day long." It made Kay freeze for a few seconds. I know. I guess it would be a bit stifling, but it's still the best spot out there. It'd be a waste not to go for it, wouldn't it? He brushed off his jacket and bluntly laid it out. "Forget it. Someone like you wouldn't last a month before running for the hills. You're the type who loves to move around, the type who loves to show off. Sitting still in one place there would bore you to death." Kai couldn't argue, but he was still curious. "So where the hell are you planning to go?" Demian looked up with a determined gaze and declared, "I'm joining the Knight Callus." Just that one name dropping caused everyone to go pale. Kai was so shocked his face twisted and he yelled, "Knight Callus, is that the place I'm thinking of?" Guys, Demian has officially lost his mind. He was immediately kicked in the shin by Demian. "Shut your mouth." The poor guy Kai doubled over in pain, clutching his leg, but then he started laughing. "Demian, I knew it." He was slightly surprised by the reaction. "What?" Kai looked up, cheering with excitement. "You really are a certified madman. The organized reckless kinda crazy too. But that's exactly why I love hanging out with you." Just then the instructor's loud voice called out, "Break over! Everyone fall in! Let's get back to training." Kai quickly stood up, urging him on as they walked. "Let's go keep training. Since we just got rid of a heavy rival for that administrative spot." After the training session, Baruth stepped onto the podium to speak. "You have all worked incredibly hard over the past month." Demian listened in silence, but deep down his heart was racing. "I can't believe the day we finish training is already here. It feels like we just enlisted yesterday." He looked down at the trainees and smiled encouragingly. "I will be rooting for your future endeavors after you leave this training camp. Keep fighting and keep moving forward so you can contribute to the kingdom." Suddenly, Jamo glanced at him and whispered a reminder. Demian immediately understood and stood at attention. He shouted at the top of his lungs to command the unit, "Attention, salute the captain, glory to the kingdom." Then it was his turn to announce, "That concludes the training graduation ceremony. We are finished here. Now I will announce the list of the 5 most outstanding recruits." Draymond began to reveal the names, starting with the leader of the first squad. Demian, satisfied with his score, congratulated the boy. His eyes lit up and he quickly replied, "Yes, sir." He felt like he was floating on cloud 9, thinking, "That's it, I did it." Draymond continued, "Next, the second person is Aphel from Squad 3. Aphel stepped forward and replied, "Yes, sir." After that, other familiar names were called out. "Kai from Squad 1, the squad leader of Squad 3, and the squad leader of Squad 2, Alex," Draymond announced. Once he finished, he added, "You 5 follow me as a reward. Each of you gets to choose one piece of equipment from the armory." They all followed him to a massive door. Draymond explained, "You can take anything you find inside. We'll start with the highest score. Demian, you go in first." Excitedly, he walked in. "Yes, teacher." In his heart, he was celebrating. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Demian looked around the room and remarked, "It's pretty well organized in here, isn't it?" He picked up a few items to examine. "Is this a magic potion? I wonder if there are any hidden treasures in this armory that I don't know about." He quickly put them back, telling himself to focus. "Looking at it, I guess not. I'll just take exactly what I need, and get out of here quickly." It was exactly as he had heard since stepping inside. His eyes couldn't leave it for a second. Demian reached out to grab something. "Found you?" Turns out the item he was securing was a ring, a piece of gear that a subordinate at training camp number 3 had whispered to him about. It was a ring capable of activating an invisibility spell momentarily when mana was infused into it. Once he had what he wanted, Demian quickly left. The rest of the recruits certainly wouldn't pay any attention to this ring, because none of them knew how to use mana anyway. Just as he passed by Aphel, his mind changed. "Well, except for one person, him." Draymond, standing outside, announced, "Next Aphel, you go in." He walked straight inside. Walked. "Yes, sir." Demian stood outside, waiting silently. "But in my past life, the one who took this ring was Aphel, right? He definitely used mana." To sense the uniqueness of this ring, Demian's gaze turned serious. "Now I'm curious, what will he bring out instead?" Seeing the other boy come out just as fast as he went in, Demian was startled. "He came out faster than I thought." Did he decide what to pick beforehand? Draymond, standing right next to him, saw him lost in thought and asked, "Demian, is something wrong?" Demian quickly shook his head. No, nothing at all, sir. But he had silently noted everything. There was definitely no mistake. The seal that Offal brought out, it matched the crest of a kingdom that had fallen long ago. In the past, I had always wondered how he knew how to use mana. At such a young age, a thought flashed through his mind. Don't tell me! Offal has a deep connection to that ancient kingdom. Draymond locked the large door and asked, "All right, everyone has their item now, right?" He stroked his chin deep in thought about Offal's choice. "Offal, do you know what this is?" Offal calmly explained, "I just felt a divine power coming from it, so I decided to take it." Draymond smiled, satisfied to see the boy understood, and provided more information. Divine power, huh? That makes sense. This is a seal imbued with the power to exorcise evil and avoid misfortune. He looked at the other two and remarked in awe, "You brought a spear not bad at all. And that's a shield crafted by the artisan Quato." Finally, his gaze landed on Demian. Draymond was a bit hesitant. "And Demian, are you sure about that one? That ring only helps you reduce a bit of your body weight." Surprised, Demian asked, "Body weight, sir?" Draymond was a little taken aback and offered, "Did you pick it at random without knowing what it was? Let me try wearing it to see." But Demian had already quickly put it on himself. He tried moving around on the spot, his eyebrows arching up. "Oh, surprisingly, it helps me feel much lighter than I imagined. With this, I'll be able to move much faster on the battlefield." Draymond stepped closer and asked seriously, "Are you satisfied?" Demian nodded decisively and explained, "Yes, it's actually much better than I thought." Inside, he was incredibly excited. Invisibility and weight reduction. This ring is truly an A-rank holy relic. Seeing everyone was satisfied, he announced the next procedure. "All right, let's head back. You all need to go submit your applications for your unit choices." And reaching the room, James handed out the application forms, asking Damian to fill his out too. Damian firmly stuck to his choice of the neonatal unit, and James just rolled his eyes, sighing inwardly. The more he thought about it, the more of a pity it seemed. If Damian joined the Knights, he would definitely go far, but Damian stopped writing and handed his request form back. "I've finished writing." Raymond reached out to take it. "All right." He was still worried, so he reminded him carefully, "Of course I know you can handle yourself. But that place is extremely dangerous, so please be careful." Damian heard this and nodded, responding, "Yes, sir, thank you for your concern." And Damian finally let out a sigh of relief as the announcement came. "You've worked hard all throughout the past month." Receiving the notice that he could set off in a few days, Damian bowed once more to express his thanks for everything. "Thank you, coach." And he pushed the door open to leave the room now that everything was settled. Damian's gaze lingered on the familiar space that he had grown attached to. At long last, I'm almost there. For some reason, he felt a mix of joy and sadness. Suddenly, a shout echoed through the hallway, and Damian was slightly surprised that the other person had found him. "Offal, is that you?" And the other boy marched over, fuming with rage. I heard it from the coach. Offal angrily raised his voice to question, "Why aren't you joining the Knights with your level? You're more than qualified for it." Damian shook his head, expressing his own point of view. "That place doesn't belong to me." As Offal bit his lower lip to hold back his emotions, lowering his voice to say, "I'm going to join the Knights. I've already received a recommendation letter from Coach Leon H. He knew that already, so he just smiled and encouraged him, "That's a wise choice. You'll surely do well." That only made Offal more annoyed, yet he couldn't do anything about it. "You say it's a wise choice, yet you're the one refusing it. You really are impossible to figure out, Damian." He looked up and seriously reminded him, "That neonatal unit you signed up for. I heard that place is terrifyingly dangerous, so remember to take care of your health." Both of them grasped each other's hands firmly with great spirit, and Offal smiled and promised, "We definitely have to meet again." Damian curled his lips slightly, expressing his thanks. His gaze followed Offal's figure as he walked away, thinking to himself, "I wonder if he knows that in the distant future, he will become the general of the Doc's kingdom. Who knows, he might even become stronger than a monster. But regardless, I am really looking forward to Offal's future." Damian turned around with rare excitement. Well, it's time to say goodbye to the others. And just as he returned to the room, everyone had already finished packing their clothes and gear. Everything was done. Kai saw him and ran over quickly, calling out, "Damian?" and laughed as he teased, "We thought you'd just leave without even saying a word. You guys really thought I'd leave without saying goodbye?" Hearing that, he sighed and expressed his feelings. When leaving, one must say goodbye. Who knows when we'll meet again? Suddenly Kai smiled, dropping a meaningful hint. You guys will meet me again sooner than you think. After that, he turned to everyone and announced in a loud voice, All right, our captain wants to say a final goodbye, so everyone quiet down and pay attention. Damien held his head high, his eyes brimming with sincere joy as he spoke. You've all worked hard. Thank you for following my lead and try to do your best in your new units. Everyone responded in unison, cheering. Thank you for everything, Damien. Hope to see you soon. And he nodded with satisfaction, wishing everyone all the best. A while later, Damien had taken off his uniform to put on his regular clothes, and just then a soft, gentle voice sounded nearby. Damien. He paused for a beat before turning to look at her, smiling brightly as he greeted her. Long time no see, Damien. I am Jell from the Hummo Merchant Guild. It's a pleasure to meet you. Shifting the scene to the building in town, Jell had prepared everything the other person needed. First, here are the detailed documents on how to use your investment. She seriously presented everything based on his conditions. We expect a return of 3% of net revenue, and Damien reviewed each page with surprise and satisfaction. That's great. I didn't expect her to plan the use of my investment so neatly. Jell put on a professional smile and said, If you have any questions, feel free to ask. He put the documents down, sealing the deal. After seeing this, I don't have any more questions. Let's proceed with this. Later, there will be staff bringing the insurance money under my name. She took back the documents, intending to move on to the next procedure. Understood. And as for the detailed contract, suddenly Damien waved his hand in refusal. That's not necessary. A contract is only needed when there's conflict between both parties. I trust you'll handle everything well. That sudden trust also left Jell quite surprised. You really are a very special person, Damien. And he placed a small chest on the table and said, Please check this. This is the investment as promised. And as soon as it opened, she couldn't hide her astonishment. Damien on the table right now was a whole chest of glittering gold. Jell was stunned, guessing the investment amount as promised was 300 gold coins, but this looked to be over 500. Damien snapped his fingers and explained, That's just a small token of my appreciation for your hard work. She still couldn't recover, intending to adjust a few things. Then I have to revise the investment amount in the contract. But it was still blocked by him. It's fine. In his heart, Damien had been satisfied from the start. She easily looked down on me because of my age and youthful appearance, but the documents she prepared for me as a true investor were quite impressive. JL suddenly became a bit curious about the other person's aspirations. You just finished your training course, right? That means you are about to move to your assigned unit. Where are you going? You calmly and honestly shared, I'm heading west. I registered for the Neocalis unit near the border zone forest. She went from one surprise to another. What the Neocalis unit? Don't tell me you volunteered for that. Damien shrugged, looking somewhat arrogant. Do you really think the top student of the class would be forced to go there? The corner of Damien's mouth curled up teasingly, asking, Is something the matter? If I happen to kick the bucket, that investment will just belong to the Hummo Trading Guild anyway. To my surprise, JL replied very seriously, Please don't say things like that. I don't like that kind of joke. It made you raise an eyebrow, secretly impressed. I thought she was just a gentlewoman, but she's as sharp as a razor at times like this, isn't she? She regained her composure and asked further, When do you depart? Damien replied truthfully, In 3 days. JL stood up, then offering a promise of great reliability. Understood. I will use the investment you entrusted to me as effectively as possible. Seeing her leave, you let out a sigh of relief. The investment deal is done. Damien was full of excitement, determined to enjoy himself well. All right then. In 3 days, I'll be buried in that terrifying forest, so from now until then, I've got to eat some delicious food to my heart's content. So you dove into a pub, downing many glasses of beer with great refreshment. Then Damien stopped by a BBQ stall, buying skewers one after another and devouring them until he got sleepy. You fell asleep right on the street, sleeping soundly until the departure day. Damien held the map, whispering to himself, I should probably get going around now. Your eyes glanced back to check the supplies. The necessary gear was almost all gathered. Now all that's left is to go. But suddenly a strange feeling pressed against your back, making Damien freeze. When he turned around, he was extremely stunned to see, Kai, why are you here? Kai laughed out loud, saying, Didn't I tell you that we'd meet again soon? Damien narrowed his eyes, probing, Kai, don't tell me. Suddenly, Kai called out to Damien, directly full of momentum, assertively declaring, Do you really think our relationship only stops at being classmates in the training camp? I also registered for the Neocalis unit, Demian, let's do great things there, shall we? Shall we? Kai walked over, slung his arm around Demian's shoulder, and urged, Let's get going, shall we? As the two were excitedly about to leave, a voice rang out to stop them. Wait a second. This sentence made Kai startle and look up, asking, What is it? JL walked over, smiling shyly, and said, Thank goodness I'm not too late. Kai stared blankly at the girl in front of him and asked, What wind blew you here? Demian was also curious. And what's with all this stuff? She explained, I heard the Neocalis unit is stationed far away, so I prepared this carriage for your trip. Inside are some snacks that keep for a long time, as well as some necessities you might need. Demian heard this and was even more confused. But why would you do that? Remembering your previous look and words, just to repay the favor you did for me. JL affirmed, just like the way you repaid my sincerity. Demian, my family has always engraved the rule of give and take in our hearts, so I spent the last 2 days gathering all this. She bid them farewell, safe travels, you two. This pile of gifts made Kai extremely delighted. Kai praised her. She's really generous, isn't she? Being praised, JL scratched her head and replied, Think of this as an investment. Since you told me to invest more in the future. Demian was startled by this and asked, What did you say? You laughed until your stomach hurt, thinking to yourself, She's a terrible liar, but this girl is more interesting than I thought. You then turned away, not forgetting to leave a promise, all right. See you later. JL bowed to respond, Yes, goodbye, Demian. The two men stepped onto the carriage simultaneously and started off. JL stood behind, watching the carriage move further and further away until it disappeared from sight. The journey for Kai and Demian lasted about a few days. Finally, the two could see a town in the distance. Kai sat in the carriage stomach, turning inside out, complaining, Damn it! Why is this road so bumpy? It's turning my stomach, Demian exclaimed. Walking would probably have made our limbs fall off. You pointed outside and announced, Anyway, looking at the silhouette of the Urkon Defense Force, that means we've reached Urkon. Kai wondered, But I don't see any sign of people around here at all. Demian sat leaning his arms against the back wall and explained, Probably because of the monsters. Or maybe they're all in the border zone forest. Most of the residents in Urkon make a living by going into the border zone forest to pick a type of herb called a mancho. A mancho is a poisonous plant that causes high fever and diarrhea. But when processed correctly, it becomes the key ingredient for an incredibly mild painkiller. 60% of the kingdom's amato supply is harvested from the coastal forest. John Zion says that no matter how dangerous it gets, the villagers can't just quit the job. After getting out of the vehicle, Demian eagerly urged them to hurry to the base. Let's head out. The two walked into a desolate, secluded place where the streets were empty, and Kai frowned as he spoke. Hey, Demian, don't tell me. He pointed forward and asked, You mean that building over there? Are you sure that place is even habitable? It looks like it'll collapse if you just touch it. Meanwhile, Demian keenly caught the scent of blood nearby. Seeing no reply, Kai called out, confused, Demian. Then Demian warned him someone's coming. From far away, a fairly large group of people was slowly heading toward them. This group didn't seem very strong. Some were even injured and had to be supported by others just to walk. And on their shoulder guards, everyone had the symbol and the word Neo engraved. As the group passed by, a young man glanced at Demian with an unfriendly look. After that, the group disappeared behind the pitch-black door. Kai looked at them and exclaimed, Man, look at their faces. They look just like wandering ghosts. Demian could only sigh and remind him, You have to get used to that, Kai. This is a place where people face life and death every single day. He secretly wondered why he suddenly remembered that matter now. Remembering the past, Demian once stood before a platoon of soldiers and asked, According to you all, what is the most important duty of a soldier? They excitedly answered according to their own perspectives. Following orders, absolutely, sir. Isn't it destroying the enemy in the most efficient way, sir? Even if I die, I'll make sure to take 20 bastards down with me. Demian frowned slightly, showing his disapproval of those views. Then he knocked one soldier on the head hard, causing the guy a lot of pain. When he asked, Why just flick my head? Demian replied, Because your answer was the worst one. Listen carefully. The correct answer is do not die. He asserted, You are forbidden from dying. Never cheapen your own life. You must survive and return at all costs. We are forced to get stronger so we don't lose our lives. Is that clear? Back to the present. Demian sighed, thinking to himself, The looks on their faces when I said that back then. I still remember it vividly, even though they all eventually died anyway. He announced to his companion, "Let's go inside too." Kai asked, confused, "Right now?" Damien turned and asked, "Did you forget why we came here?" "We came here to get stronger. Standing around here is just a waste of time," Kai replied anxiously. "Hey, Damien, you saw the look on their faces earlier, right? The atmosphere inside must be suffocating. Maybe we should wait a bit." But no matter what was said, Damien didn't stop his footsteps toward that dark door. Leaving Kai helpless, he fearfully chased after him and shouted, "Damien, wait!" "At the Neo-Callus unit!" Callus angrily threw his sword into a crate. Then he cursed, "Damn it, those bastards from the Defense Force are absolute scum." They clearly said there were only a few snails, but there were over 30 of them, and they even dragged an old snail mage along. Lucia reported anxiously, "Sergeant Callus's arm is hanging by a thread. It's about to be severed. If he isn't treated immediately, he'll be forced to get a medical discharge." For members of the Neo-Callus unit who were dumped here as a severe disciplinary punishment, there was no such thing as a medical discharge option. It was either rot in prison for the rest of your life or struggle to survive in this living hell, or be worked to the bone at Neo-Callus and then discarded like a rag. Victor felt so bitter and choked up that he shouted, "Damn it, medical discharge my ass!" With an injury like that, if he gets kicked out, is he supposed to eat dirt to survive? Standing at the captain of Neo-Callus's side, John looked calmer and spoke up to offer a solution. "First, let's call a doctor. Let's try to invite a priest from the temple and see." Fabienne asked back, "Captain, do you know how much those religious zealots charge? Our salaries aren't even enough to cover it." John pulled out his own coin purse and replied, "That's 20 gold coins. Let's pool our money together." Seeing this, Victor shouted angrily, "Captain, isn't this the money you saved up for your mother's surgery?" He smiled weakly and replied, "Her condition has improved. The doctor said it's not urgent enough for surgery yet." The other soldiers heard this and looked at each other. Through their eyes, everyone understood how much their captain had sacrificed for their unit. Everyone then joined in and contributed. "Damn it, count my share in too." "Me too." Diano shyly brought his part and whispered, "I'd like to contribute too." Victor shouted angrily, "Hey, since when does the rookie who just joined think he can contribute money, huh? Take this money and buy yourself a new pair of boots to replace those ragged ones, kid." His voice trembled, almost pleading. "Please let me chip in too. Sergeant Charlie was hurt this badly all because he was trying to save me." Tajan heard this and choked up, cursing under his breath. "Damn, what a good kid." He then ordered one of the soldiers, "This is going to take some time, so go ahead and call the priest from the temple first." He quickly ran outside to carry out the order. "Yes, sir." Tajan turned to someone else. "Diano, how old are you this year again?" He replied, "I'm 18, sir." Tajan placed a hand on his comrade's shoulder then. He praised him. "Time flies, doesn't it? Our youngest has already been in the service for a year now. Now we just need Charlie to hold on." Behind him, someone suddenly called out, "Captain Jeremy reporting the new recruits we were told about have arrived." Hearing this, they all cast skeptical looks toward Tajan, who replied, "New recruits, huh? Things have been so intense I completely forgot." He shouted, "Diano!" He responded, "Here, sir." Tajan put an arm around his youngest recruit and announced, "Let's go. It's time to go pick up your juniors." In the office, Tajan looked at the two newcomers and asked, "Are you two from this batch of recruits?" They answered in unison, "Yes, sir." He silently evaluated each one. "That kid looks capable. His muscle and strength seem pretty good." But when he looked at Demian, Tajan hesitated. "Though," he asked, "are you really only 13 years old?" He nodded and replied, "That's right, sir." Tajan thought to himself, "He's even 5 years younger than Diano, our youngest. Why would a kid like this volunteer to enlist?" He helplessly put the papers down and muttered, "Good grief. No idea what these kids are thinking nowadays." Kai pointed at Demian and stated, "But he was the top graduate of the training course." Tajan was stunned and asked, "Top graduate?" He reminded them softly, "So what? The training camp and this place are two completely different worlds." Demian replied, "I know that." His expression, as if it were no big deal, startled the captain, who asked, "You know that, and you still showed your face here?" He then shouted, "Diano!" He responded, "Here, sir." Tajan pointed at the two recruits and ordered, "You two take them to get settled and have them clean the place up." Diano replied, "Understood, sir." He glanced at the two of them and announced, "Follow me." Demian and Kai followed Diano down the unit's hallway as he explained everything. Here at Neocalix, there's no such thing as rank. Forget about titles like platoon leader or company commander. The guy from before is the unit commander, and the one next to him is the deputy. Under them, seniority is based on whoever arrived first. The order is extremely strict. Stepping into the dormitory, Diano announced, "Pick whichever bed you like. Anyway, you won't be lying in them for long." Kai asked curiously, "What do you mean by that?" Diano replied, "I've been here for a whole year and I'm still the newest guy. Do you understand what that means?" Kai replied, "How would I know?" No sooner had he finished speaking than he kicked Kai hard in the leg. Kai groaned in pain, doubling over and clutching his leg. Diano looked at the two recruits with a gaze full of hatred, mixed with pain as he said, "It means," his voice strained, "that everyone who came after me is already dead and buried." This sentence made Demian and Kai freeze speechless. Diano turned and left the room, not forgetting to remind them, "Go ahead and unpack, then clean the barracks first. Once you're done, I'll explain the rest." Kai sat down on the bed while Demian turned to carefully observe the room. Kai angrily swore. "What kind of jerk talks like such a jinx?" Seeing that Demian didn't seem angry at all, he asked, "And why are you smiling again?" He just casually replied, "I smile when I feel like it," Demian whispered to himself. So he still hasn't changed at all. Then he spoke up. "Start cleaning Kai." Kai questioned him. "Are you serious?" Demian picked up a cloth and answered, "We have to do it anyway, so we might as well do it right. This is our first mission, isn't it?" Demian couldn't help but tease, "Clean it until it's clean enough to eat off of." This made Kai shout back in anger, "Do I look like a janitor to you?" A while later at the Neocalix cafeteria, Diano sat quietly in a corner thinking to himself, "I'm afraid every time a new comrade joins, I end up getting fond of them and growing close to them, remembering those times he had been friendly and chatted with the new recruits. Today is your first mission, right? Watch carefully. Take it easy today. Stay in the back. Just one moment of carelessness is enough to cost you your life." But Neocalix is exactly that kind of place. Because before I knew it, I stopped looking out for the new recruits because sooner or later as time passes, they'll all lose their lives. But these new recruits, I don't know why, but that kid is the one bothering me the most. The way he looks at me, it's like he's known me for a long time. While I was lost in thought, the cobbler called out, "Hey, Diano, your boots are all fixed up." I took the boots and thanked him. Then we chatted for a bit, but then he asked, "By the way, I saw a few clueless kids standing in front of your base earlier. Are those the new recruits?" I replied, "So you saw them too?" He laughed and said, "They looked so lost I thought they were from the defense force, but it turns out they're your juniors." I didn't dare answer, that just bowed my head and said, "I'll come by again next time." As I walked, I thought to myself, juniors, damn it, I have to crush their arrogance as soon as I get back to the room. Staring at the base gate ahead, I muttered, "Eagerness, confidence, pride. Those things will only get you killed in a place like this." I figured there was no way they'd actually done a decent job cleaning. But as I walked in, I was shocked Demian was there, face covered in dirt, turning to greet me. "You're back, sir." Everything in the room was blindingly clean. He called the other new guy to come eat, and two others even patted my shoulder, saying, "Even we're a bit spooked by this." "Diano, how hard did you work these kids?" I stammered, terrified. I didn't do anything." Demian then brought over a bucket of water and reported, "We've finished cleaning as ordered. Please, sir, check if there's anything else that needs doing." Looking at the room spotless and free of even a speck of dust, I felt uneasy. Usually when I tell them to clean, they just half-ass it. How is it this squeaky clean? I wondered if this was their way of getting back at me, a passive-aggressive power move. Commander Tajan was standing in the back, laughing his head off. He praised the recruits, saying, "They're amazing. It looks like a brand-new barracks." The soldiers looked around, confused by his expression. Is the commander actually laughing? The guy who supposedly got no emotions. Tajan then turned serious and called out, "New recruits, get over here." He asked, "Did you two really clean all of this by yourselves?" They both answered in unison, "Yes, sir." He curiously asked, "Why go to such lengths?" "A quick sweep would have been enough," Demian replied sternly. "That was your order, Senior Diano. We simply carried it out properly because it was your command." Tajan listened. He looked deep into the young soldier's eyes, thinking, "After all my years on the battlefield standing on the edge of life and death, I only need one look to know someone's potential. That big kid over there, with a little more training, he's ready for combat. But this kid, I can't read him at all. A top-scoring cadet, why would he throw himself into this hellhole? There's definitely a hidden motive for him to be here." But before figuring that out, Tajon ordered, "Attention, everyone." Everyone looked over, curious about what the order would be, but contrary to his usual serious tone, Tajon smiled and announced, "From today on, these two are the youngest members of our unit. Give them a warm welcome." Demian and Kai smiled at each other, happy. It was a well-deserved result for their hard work and dedication. Diano was lying on the wooden slats with Demian. I asked, "Hey, Demian, when do you think this war will end? Do you think it even will?" He was quiet for a moment, his gaze dropping. Then he replied calmly, "When we surrender, the war ends." Suddenly, I closed my eyes and said firmly, "Demian, you absolutely cannot die before me." Demian turned to look at me, eyes narrowed. "Did you eat something rotten? Why are you being so sappy all of a sudden?" I laughed it off, just felt like saying it. "Promise me." As the memory faded, Demian sighed, filled with longing. He thought to himself, "Back then I didn't even bother answering him, but in the end I kept my promise." He recalled the memory of himself standing over Diano's dead body. Demian's eyes were bloodshot with rage as he charged onto the battlefield alone, slaughtering dozens of enemy soldiers, wondering why on earth he was the one who lived longer than that guy. A look of sorrow crossed Demian's face as he remembered that moment. Damn it. Sitting up and rubbing his face, he thought to himself, no point trying to sleep now. Might as well spend this time practicing mana accumulation. Demian quickly put on his training gear and stepped outside. Deep in the forest, he caught a glimpse of someone training. Demian wondered, suspicious. Who's training at this hour? It was Diano practicing his swordplay under the soft moonlight. Demian stood to the side, watching closely without making a sound. He sighed inwardly. Even in our past life, he was a total training freak. Still, Demian watched him lean on his sword, panting heavily. Why does he use his sword like that fighting style? It completely contradicts his greatest strength. Speed. Demian let out a helpless sigh, thinking, right, I remember now. Back then it took so much effort to convince him to switch weapons. If I walk up and tell him now, he'll probably punch me, even if he couldn't actually land a hit on me. He turned around and silently walked away. Better not bother Diano while he's training. It took me so much effort just to build up a little favorability. Don't want to ruin it now. There will be a better time to talk later. The scene shifts to the next morning. Everyone gathered at the foot of the massive mountains, looking around and grumbling. Man, no matter how many times I see this training ground, it gives me the creeps. Looks like we're going to be worked to the bone today. Valen turned to the soldiers nearby and started stirring up trouble. Too boring waiting for the captain. How about a bet, guys? Want to bet on whether these two new recruits can survive? Until the end of today's training session, the whole group erupted, jumping on the bet. I'll put down 10 silvers that they can't even make it through the morning. I bet 20 silvers they'll pass out right after the morning shift. Sky and Demian watched everything from afar. Sky grumbled, annoyed. What are they doing? Are they really using us as gambling bait? That's taking it too far. Watching them laugh and bet, he thought to himself, I guess this is just how they are. No one was even trying to stop them. The atmosphere in this unit is just... Demian suddenly turned and marched over. Sky followed, suspicious. Demian, where are you going? Suddenly, he stepped right up to the group, making the bets. He spoke up, catching everyone off guard. Mind if I join in? Looks like fun. The men were startled. Valen laughed loudly. Whoa, you scared me. The others chimed in, mocking. Look at that, the main character is practically begging for it. Hey, rookie, you even have any money on you? Demian kept a perfectly calm face and replied as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I do. But I want to change the betting conditions a bit. His face showed pure confidence as he pulled out one shining gold coin. I bet that in today's training, I will outperform everyone here, including my friend in the second squad. I'm taking first place. He dropped the gold coin. The smiles on their faces darkened as they stared at Demian. He confidently put his hands on his hips. Do you guys want to add any other conditions? Their mouths curled into sly, nasty grins. They started hooting and jeering. This new kid's got some guts, huh? One of them pointed at the coin. Fine. If you win, you can take all this cash. Valen was fired up, clenching his fist. And if you lose, you have to do everyone's laundry for a whole month. One of the guys mocked him. If you're not confident, just back out now, kid. Demian remained unfazed and continued. Since we're playing big with a gold coin and a laundry bet, mind if I add one more condition of my own? Valen found it interesting. Another condition. What is it? Let's hear it. Demian's expression turned serious and he said quietly, If I win, I get full rights to rest. During all periodic training sessions for 1 month. The men were stunned, unable to believe their ears. What skip training? That makes 0 sense. Suddenly, Captain Tazan appeared out of nowhere. Fine, I'll allow it. The others turned around, startled. Captain! He looked toward Diano, who was standing to the side, and called out, Diano! Diano replied, suspicious. Yes, sir. The captain gave a cheerful smile and gestured to the group. Why don't you join this bet, too? Diano stepped forward, questioning. Me, sir? Tazan interrupted him, provoking him. What's the matter? Scared of losing to a rookie? Diano shook his head, his face hardening. There's no way that'll happen. I just don't want to waste my money on a bet where the result is already decided. Tazan looked satisfied and tossed over a silver coin, acting generous. I'll cover the bet for you, then. He walked up to Demian, standing twice as tall as the boy he spoke. John heard this, and feeling satisfied, tossed over 1 silver coin with a generous air, saying, Fine, I'll cover the bet for you. As he stepped in front of Demian, his towering frame making him look twice the size of the boy. Listen up, rookie. If you manage to finish this training better than the veterans, I'll grant you all the free time you want during drills. John then turned toward the group of troublemakers, his expression warning. But for any of you who lose to him, I'm putting you through an intensified hell training course, so you'd better give it everything you've got. Their faces darkened with rage at the arrogant brat. We've got to teach this kid a lesson. You'd better train like your life depends on it, boy, they muttered. Demian just lowered his head, acting cautious. But inside, he was feeling great. Everything was going exactly according to plan. He didn't care about that bit of free time anyway. He watched everyone focusing on their warm-ups, silently calculating, I have to use this method. I need to change the lethargic atmosphere of this unit where everyone has given up because they don't know when they'll die, just wasting their days away without hope. If I don't, sooner or later, that mindset will consume not just me, but everyone around me. John folded his arms, looking down, and spoke in a stern voice. All right, let's start the physical training. He pointed to a pile of logs nearby and began the instructions. Today's exercise is to run while carrying these logs. Run straight to the top of that rocky mountain. Hearing this, everyone erupted in protest. Captain, we don't usually do this crazy exercise. It's bad enough for the rookie, but why us too? Tazan's veins popped as he shouted, silencing the crowd instantly. Quiet, pick them up now, stop whining and move it! They quickly hauled the logs up the mountain, all of them exhausted. Tazan's own group was struggling, drenched in sweat. He watched Tazan standing on the cliff, observing them. Why the hell did the captain come up with this exercise all of a sudden? They grumbled while struggling to climb, clearly blaming the new recruits. It's their first time doing this. They're bound to collapse in a heartbeat. Valen heard this and turned to look for Demian. What the hell, where did the kid go? His face went pale with shock as he whipped his head upward. No way! Demian was already far ahead of them. When did he scramble all the way up there? He wheezed his own breath, coming in ragged gasps. He glanced at his ring, marveling inwardly. I never expected it to reduce the weight of what I'm carrying, too. Demian wore a satisfied smile. Choosing this ring was definitely the right call. He looked down the mountain to find the others and see just how far behind the veterans were. Demian looked at the person leading the pack below, still a long way off, and thought, they're not catching up anytime soon. The only one desperately trying to keep pace was Demian. Stared at the person straining to catch up to him. Definitely Diano. He was carrying the log, gasping for air, his eyes fixed on the peak as sweat dripped down. He's almost at the top. Watching Demian's relaxed, expectant face, he thought to himself, I thought he was just some top-scoring trainee. But this is just... A moment later, the first footsteps reached the summit. Demian planted the log on the ground with pure confidence. First place. Total dominance. John, waiting at the top, was quite stunned. He actually finished first. He looked at the second person arriving and sighed. To think even Diano took the L. Looks like we've caught ourselves someone special. I thought so. After a while, a few more reached the summit. Tazan looked down at those who hadn't made it yet and barked, Training over! His face darkened and his voice made them tremble. As agreed, the losers get the hell training. Everyone who arrived after the rookie get down on the ground now. Suddenly, Valen rushed over, looking panicked, which made Tazan suspicious. With a terrified expression, Valen spoke breathlessly, pointing toward the unit building. Captain, look over there. Tazan looked where he was pointing, his eyes widening in horror. A red flag was fluttering at the distant barracks. The whole group panicked. Is that the level 1 emergency red flag? The majestic fortress gate stood tall under the pale sunlight. Tazan walked quickly inside, asking, "What's going on? Why was the red flag raised?" A subordinate reported, "People died in the Bordenjean forest, sir." He gripped the armrest and sat down calmly. Details on the victims and the exact location. The subordinate continued, "They were herbalists. The area is off limits." Tazan gritted his teeth, unable to stop himself from cursing. "Damn it, it's off limits, so why the hell do they keep wandering in there?" Tazan clenched his fists on the table and continued to ask, "Do we know the extent of the damage or if there's any information on the monsters involved?" A nervous subordinate replied, "Both are still unclear, sir. However, those herbalists were accompanied by 6 mercenaries." Before he could finish, a voice cut him off. "We still don't have any info on the monsters." Tazan looked over at John. "John, how many men can you mobilize right now?" He did a quick mental calculation before answering. "Excluding the wounded, we have about 70 men." Without hesitation, he made a serious decision. "Forget the ones with minor injuries. Assemble about 50. Make it quick." John bowed respectfully. "Understood." Tazan's brows were furrowed tight. He thought, feeling the tension rise, things are looking bad. The frequency of deployments is increasing. Is that forest changing? After everyone summoned had gathered, Tazan walked over to them step by step. "Is everyone here?" Everyone shouted in unison, "Yes, sir!" He gave the order to arm up. As soon as he finished, Demian came over panting and suggested, "We want to come along too." Tazan whipped around and refused instantly, "Absolutely not. No matter how good your training scores are, the real battlefield is a completely different story. You two just stay put at the barracks." With a face full of seriousness and determination, Demian held his ground. "We'll just come along to carry supplies and stay in the rear, sir. You already saw our strength and endurance during the fitness test earlier." Kai, standing next to him, chimed in, "We'll definitely do a good job." Tazan didn't answer right away. He lowered his eyes in thought. How embarrassing. To be in a situation where I have to rely on the strength of rookies. After a moment, Tazan turned around and muttered, "Fine, but you are not allowed to participate in the battle. Just carry the spare gear and wait in the back, move out, and hand over the spare equipment to these kids." An shouted, "Understood, sir!" Having received permission, Demian looked at Kai next to him. "The Forest of the Fallen. Xian, if I remember correctly, this is exactly where—" Demian's expression went blank as he blurted out, "The Forest of the Fallen Xian. There's a demon there." He planted his staff into the ground and wiped the sweat from his face, looking somewhat incredulous. "A demon? What kind of nonsense are you spouting?" Kai started getting flustered. "That thing isn't an ordinary monster. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it either. It was an ogre possessed by a demon, and it crushed everything. Even a steel wolf, which would normally take 5 ogres to stand a chance against, was destroyed. That's the very reason we were forced to abandon that land. If it weren't for that monster, the Neocalis unit wouldn't have been disbanded." Demian frowned and rubbed his head. "Damn it all, this information is a jumbled mess. I can't piece any of it together. At this point, even if I have to play errand boy, I have to go there and check it out myself." After a while, Tazan called out from the front, "Is everyone done packing?" Everyone responded in unison, "Yes, sir." He began to give instructions. "I'll say it again, once you enter the battlefield, you must calculate every possible scenario. If you see something dangerous, it's best to stay away. Your top priority is to make it back alive. Understood?" Everyone shouted, "Yes, Captain." Once the preparations were settled, Tazan made the decision. "Let's move out." Following the group, he thought to himself, "Finally, the first real battle is here." After traveling for a while, they all entered the forest. As he walked, he assigned tasks. "We'll scout the surrounding area first. Split up into groups of 3, but absolutely do not let anyone leave your sight." Tazan glanced at Demian and Kai, warning, "You two stick with me. Don't you dare fall behind." He replied, "Understood." Kai also nodded, "I know, sir." And in that moment, Demian's eyes scanned the area, assessing the situation. "So this is where the Forbidden Zone starts, huh? There's nothing particularly strange about this forest. Why on earth would this place—" His eyebrows furrowed tightly as if he had discovered something. "It reeks of the same bloodlust as the battlefield, doesn't it? Thanks to 5 years of living on the thin line between life and death in combat from the very moment he stepped in here, every sense in his body was screaming a warning." Demian gripped his weapon tighter and told himself, "This place is extremely dangerous." Just as he broke free from his train of thought, a sound suddenly echoed. It caught everyone's attention. Tazan quickly glanced toward the source of the noise. Did you find something? Viet shouted, "Captain, over here!" When they ran to the spot, the scene before them was stained a horrific red. Taezon stood to the side, cautious, and gave his opinion. The scout team already checked this area, didn't they? Why is their gear left behind like this? Taezon sat down to observe closely. This proves just how terrified they must have been at that moment. He continued looking toward a corner. What kind of monster could cause a scene this horrifying? He rested his sword on his shoulder and speculated, "Captain, do you think it might be a bear-type monster?" Taezon immediately countered, "There isn't a single mutant bear in this forest capable of doing this." John Tense continued, "Then could it be—" Before he could finish, a voice interrupted. "I don't think so, sir." John looked toward Demian, confused. Upon observing the thing under his feet, John suddenly exclaimed, "Isn't that the carcass of a red bear?" Demian confirmed, "Just as the vice-captain said, the culprit is likely a bear-like creature. Look at those claw marks. The size of its front paws must be absolutely massive." He pointed to a tree in the distance. Only then, "Can we explain the wounds on that carcass, sir?" Taezon stroked his chin, lost in thought, and analyzed. "That's accurate. Your reasoning is very sound." He asked with a hint of curiosity, "Where did you learn all this knowledge? Where did you learn that? You're serious?" "I shared that my dad used to be a hunter. Even though I'm not an expert on the wilderness, I've picked up a few things." Tajon nodded. "I see. That's some useful knowledge to have." Kai, who had been listening from behind, looked a bit confused. "Demian, didn't you say your dad was a soldier before—" Before he could finish his questioning, Demian shot him a freezing glare of warning. That made Kai shut his mouth. Time passed, and Tajon made a decision. "That's it for today. Retreat, pack up the bodies carefully. We have to bring them back to their families." Watching his men work together to clear the area, Demian agreed. Honestly, if they kept pushing deeper now, it would be no different from throwing their lives away. We've only just found a few clues anyway. The whereabouts of their opponent were still a mystery. He gave a faint smile and let out a sigh of relief. Even though he seemed cold on the outside, Tajon was an excellent commander. No wonder the people back then respected such an amazing person. Tajon was still standing to the side, seriously urging the men on, "Retreat now. Hurry it up." Just then, Demian suddenly realized something was wrong. He yelled at the men, "Everyone move, get out of the way!" No sooner had he finished speaking than a massive rock from who knows where came crashing straight down. A deafening sound shook the earth. Many subordinates couldn't dodge in time and were crushed underneath. The area descended into chaos. My legs went weak and I saw others turning pale. Where did that giant rock even come from? Demian quickly turned back and called for Kai. Kai stepped on the gas, sprinting over to use his strength to lift the rock off their teammates. Demian quickly rushed over to help. Gritting his teeth, he pushed against the rock. After a struggle, it was finally lifted. Seeing the opportunity, Tajon moved in to pull the trapped men out one by one. "Hurry! Everyone give them a hand! Save our comrades!" The men who had been crushed were trembling as they were pulled out by the others. Tajon crouched down and took a quick look. "Damn it! It's bad." Demian, standing nearby, rummaged through his pack. "Chew on this." He pulled out a piece of grass and instructed seriously, "You have to chew it for a long time to swallow the juice. That should dull the pain a bit." Tajon was startled and reached out to stop Demian. "That's sleeping grass. It might reduce pain, but it's poisonous. Swallowing it without an antidote is—" Demian didn't change his expression, explaining, "If you chew it along with the seeds of this thornberry, it can neutralize the toxicity. While they're still conscious, force them to chew it. The more the better." Finally, Tajon didn't interfere anymore. He fell into deep thought. How does this kid know about these kinds of things? Once the teammates had been given the pain relief, Demian proposed, "Captain, we must retreat immediately. That rock definitely didn't fall on its own. The culprit is clearly lurking around here." Just as he finished speaking, the sight before them left Demian and Tajon stunned. "A monster." Looking at the giant bear in front of him, he couldn't help but blurt out, "This is insane! What the hell is that?" Someone couldn't help but exclaim in disbelief. "In all my life, I've never seen such a massive monster." Va, trembling nearby, was just as shocked. How could a black bear turn into something like that? Without wasting another second, Tajon roared, ordering the whole team to prepare for battle. Upon hearing the command, everyone present quickly pointed their swords forward. The monster bear also let out a massive roar. Then it lunged toward them, starting its attack. Under the destructive power of its razor-sharp claws, someone shouted a warning, "Get out of the way!" Tajan focused intently, urging the wounded to be moved to the back. Surround it from all four sides. Aim for its legs first. On this side. Hyo-san swung his axe, preparing to strike the beast's leg. His teammate yelled, "Hyo-san!" He reassured them, "Leave it to me," saying that Hyo-san took a swing, powerfully driving his sharp blade downward. A forceful strike landed straight on the bear's leg. However, looking closely, the blow hadn't affected it one bit. He thought to himself, that hit should have been able to split a bull's thigh, so how? Seeing Hyo-san stunned and unresponsive, Tajan ran over from behind and shouted, "Hyo-san, focus!" At that very moment, the beast raised one of its arms and decisively slammed it down. Under the immense force, both the axe and Hyo-san's body flew back a distance. He landed hard on the ground, gasping for breath while staring at the crazed beast in front of him. Next, it stepped closer and raised its sharp claws once again. The beast slammed them down hard onto the ground, shattering it into pieces. Witnessing it all from start to finish, Tajan couldn't help but grit his teeth and curse, "You damn monster!" He glanced at a corner, silently assessing the situation. 3 comrades have already gone down. Today I'm definitely taking this beast's life. Tajan regained his focus, stared straight at the beast, and commanded, "Attack now!" All the sharp swords were pointed straight at it. He roared again, "Damn it, keep stabbing until you pierce through it!" Seeing Demian and the others intent on moving forward, one man blocked their path to stop the recruits. "Stay back." Seizing the opportunity, Tajan signaled to the rear, "Now." He swung his sword with all his might from a distance. "Captain!" A powerful slash landed, severing the beast's leg in the blink of an eye. It howled in pain, opening its mouth and roaring wildly. After losing a leg, it couldn't stand firm and collapsed right in front of Tajan. He raised the tip of his sword to its brow, his eyebrows knit tightly, and declared, "It's over." The wild beast couldn't sense the mana aura, but Demian felt someone nearby. Taishan swung his sword, leaped into midair, and finished it off with a single strike that cut across the beast's body. After everything was settled, he stepped on its carcass. He smirked with excitement. "See, brute force always wins." The guy next to him chimed in, "Serves you right, you pig." Tajan reached out toward the beast. He mentally assessed the creature, wondering where such a monstrosity had come from. As he pulled back its thick, coarse fur, he discovered something unusual. "These spots," Hyo-san asked nervously, "do you think it's contagious? People with infectious diseases usually break out in spots like this?" Demian, watching from the corner, had his eyes widened. It really was those spots. He walked step by step toward the beast's remains. How did it suddenly appear here? There's only one way a hideous creature like this could exist. Without wasting another second, Tajan decided to investigate the origin of this freak. He quickly issued orders, "Agent, take the boys and scout the surrounding area. B-Gen peel this thing, we'll take it back to make armor." Demian cut in, "I'm afraid the hide on this one isn't usable." Tajan was puzzled and blurted out, "What, why not?" He paused, staring intensely at Demian, observing his expression, and came to a realization. So this kid knows something. He changed his mind. "Forget the hide. The whole team is pulling out. Also, you the rookie, come with me." Once back at headquarters, Tajan beckoned Demian into a private room. "Sit." Demian nodded. With a serious face, Tajan looked straight at him and asked, "Do you know anything about that spotted monster we saw in the forest?" Demian was silent for a moment before deciding to speak his mind. "In my opinion, there's a high chance it's been infected by dark mana." Tajan blurted out in surprise, "Dark mana, that evil energy the dark mages use." Demian confirmed, "Yes, sir." Tajan tensed up and speculated, "Does that mean there's a dark mage hiding in the forest? You surely know that dark magic is strictly forbidden, right?" Demian lowered his eyes and shook his head. "I can't say for sure just yet. It could be a dark mage or perhaps a cursed object accumulating dark mana." Dark mana. A power borrowed from worshipping and sacrificing to demons. Those consumed by it for too long face a tragic death. Demian frowned, deep in thought. The Bojan Zion forest is supposed to have mana stones infected with dark mana, but wasn't it supposed to start manifesting much later? The existence of that mana stone. It wasn't supposed to be known to the world until a great catastrophe shook the empire in the next timeline. Demian discovered the monster possessed by demons in the Bojan Zion forest. The Imperial Army formed a subjugation team to enter the forest and eliminate it. A possibility suddenly struck him. Demian gasped, his pupils widening. What if everything is just beginning right now? The longer dark mana stays, the more it assimilates and mutates other monsters, making them stronger. So if we act before the mana's power spreads? I might be able to destroy it. Tajan sighed frustratedly. How are you so knowledgeable about this stuff? Demian shared honestly, my father told me about it. He encountered a similar case in the past. Tajan made a serious request. I want to hear the details. As he spoke, Tajan fell into deep thought, for their current situation was like a drowning man clutching at a straw. Demian didn't hesitate to agree. Yes, Captain, my father told me. On the other side, a moan suddenly rang out. Oh man, my whole body is aching. A man held his head, feeling gloomy. Yesterday's mission really wore me out. On the bed next to him, Demian picked up a pillow and prompted, Kai, wake up, you slacker. Kai grimaced. I know. Just then, Valen kicked the door open. Big news, guys. I heard the Bojan Zion forest has been locked down. Starting today, not just the herbalists, but us too. We're all banned from entering. So we don't have to go on missions for a while. We're just staying home to train. Kai squeezed his hands together in excitement. Hell yeah! That's like a gift from the heavens. Ajon nodded in agreement. Either way, a lot of us are injured, so it's a perfect time to rest and recover. Seeing Demian sigh, they asked, Demian, why the long face? Not happy about it, Demian replied sadly. Oh, it's nothing. It's great that we get a break, isn't it? After answering, Demian covered his face with his hands and thought to himself, considering the current state of our unit, this really is the golden time to heal. But why did it have to happen right now? Suddenly, a series of footsteps in the hallway caught Kai's attention. A guy peeked outside to gossip. Who are those guys? Why are the defense forces dragging their corpses here? Those lazy old folks are suddenly coming over here. People saw Demian sigh and immediately asked, What's with the long face, Demian? Aren't you happy? Demian replied gloomily. Oh, it's nothing. I mean, it's great to get some time off, right? After saying that, Demian covered his face with both hands, thinking to himself, considering the state of the unit right now, this really is the golden opportunity to recover from my injuries. But why, oh why did it have to be at a time like this? Suddenly, a series of footsteps in the hallway caught Kai's attention. One guy poked his head out to snoop, whispering, Who are those guys? Why are the Defense Force people dragging themselves over here? What are those lazy bums doing coming over here all of a sudden? I've no idea what they're up to. The guy from the royal family is just sitting there in the middle of the room, arms crossed, face like a stone. I look at John, feeling on edge, and ask, Gentlemen, what brings you all the way out here? He gets straight to the point, explaining that thanks to my timely report, the Magic Bureau has finally agreed to step in and help. They say they can actually sense the dark energy, the stench radiating from that monster's corpse. I purse my lips deep in thought. So everything that kid Demian said, it was all spot on. Could the John Zion forest really be connected to demonic energy? He shakes his head, adding that nothing is set in stone just yet. That's why they're sending a priest to coordinate a joint sweep with us. The proposal makes me uneasy. The situation is pretty novel, and I'm hesitant to send a soldier who actually understands demonic energy into the fray, so I quickly scramble for an excuse to refuse. The kid's just a rookie, I say. He barely even knows his way around the unit yet. Sending someone without any combat experience on a mission like this, it's just not right. Before I can finish, the Royal interrupts. But at the end of the day, isn't he the one who spotted the problem in the first place? Hearing that, I hesitate. I'm worried. Honestly, if I turn this down, I know he'll just find some other way to make life miserable for my unit later. Finally, I make up my mind. I glance over and call out, Hey, John. He answers immediately. Yes, sir, I'm right here. While Demian is still moping around, a sharp voice cuts through the air. Hey, you Demian, get over here now.